retirement updates. Miss Jenny, are you talking?
Yes, sir. And it's my time.
Oh,
And it's my time. Do you want me to go ahead and start?
I don't know.
Okay, here we go. We have in front of you a nice little booklet that is for your investment policy workshop, and that's what we're going over today. This will satisfy your requirement on an ongoing review basis that you have set forth and is also required by law once a year for you to review your investment policy statement. That was written back in 2008 and adopted, and the last amendment was in 2013. So we will review this today, and I think in light of questions that have arisen in the last couple days, that maybe this will answer some of y'all's questions, and we can go further. Anything that you have, please make it dynamic, ask questions as we go along. How's that? But have fun. All right, first of all, underneath the purpose of this, on your first page of your packet, it says the appropriate risk posture of the investments of the plan assets. We will go through that when we get to the investment policy statement and go by section by section. We will also look at the established investment guidelines regarding the selection of the investment managers, which is permissible securities that you will have in the plan assets, specific criteria, performance, etc. Also, the responsibilities of the board, commissioners, and other parties, we will go through that. I think that's where some of the questions have come up, and we want to make sure that those are addressed and that everybody is on the same page. So first and foremost, the history of the plan. Mr. Deloach, I know you're new, so I don't know how much of this you know, so we're going to just do a quick review of some highlights, since you're the newest member of the board. This plan was established in 2006 and adopted January 1st, 2006. However, it was decided by the board at that time that they would back fund it for 5 years. So right there at that moment, it became an automatic underfunded situation to the potential liability that lay ahead.
What was the amount that it was underfunded to start out with?
It was over $1 million.
It was just over $1 million.
We were in a plan with 23 other counties through GEBCOR, and we did not have, we had a percentage point, the closest that we could get to is that it was very close to $1 million and possibly slightly over at the time. But we did not have an individual report because we were part of 23 other reportees at the time.
It was very complicated. When we took this over from ACCG and moved it over, the actuarial actually found 63 people that weren't accounted for in their documentation that skewed the numbers and the liability thereof.
Well, who was handling it on our end at that time?
It was through GEBCOR with ACCG.
I mean, who internally was looking out for that here?
That was before Russia's time.
Yeah, that was before me. Adam was running the doing of my office, and there was someone, I don't know her last name, her name, first name was Shannon, who was the HR person before me.
So with that said, there was a lot of things that we had to uncover through this process, not just the defined benefit plan, but also, which we took over, my company at the time was Merrill Lynch, took over in 2008. But we were reviewing the 401A, 457B, and also the defined benefit plan. Now, the 401A and the 457 were one section, they're participant driven, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But this specific IPS is to your defined benefit plan. But I do want to state this, at that time, Rush did the RFP and called in experts to come in and bid on this. We reviewed a lot of different things, and her department also uncovered several other issues that we found. The amount of the forfeitures were how much? Do you remember?
$251,000.
That was not repurposed back into the plan. for the 401A. So when somebody leaves your employment here and they are not vested 5 years, that money goes back into the plan and is allowed to be used only as a forfeiture to the plan itself. That means that if they leave and that money goes back to you, that 401A forfeiture can only be used for the 401A plan. It cannot be used for any other plan that you have.
That's matching funds that the county had
That is
previously put in
correct.
to match funds from the employee.
And I want to say that her department actually found that amount of money, which was an extreme amount, and it should be done on a process from a fiduciary basis every quarter.
So if you're saying there was over $10,000 of forfeitures that were not repurposed, I would assume that's because it was backfunded for 5 years and people left it.
No, that's a different story. That is a participant-driven plan. That's a different plan. The DB is a pension, which is completely different.
So what caused the over 200,000 not?
They weren't doing their job.
Like an example of what would cause it to not be
Let's
repurposed?
say that I left.
They didn't claim it.
And the county had put money in to match funds that were taken out. And I left before becoming vested. That money then does not become mine at the time I leave.
That is correct. It goes back
And it just
to
sits there. And if I'm correct, we can actually be fined for that money just sitting there.
That is correct. It has
So
to
then
be
you
used
can
for.
take that money out that the county had previously put and use it to fund forward.
For the contributions or the cost of the plan, expenses, that sort of thing.
You just
It can
can't
only-
take it back out once you put it into a fund
That
and
is
use it
correct.
for other purposes. It has to
Can't
stay.
be credited
Well, what I
towards
was trying to
other,
Yeah.
Yeah. But what I was trying to understand is if it wasn't, I heard you say we did get fined, we got fined. And I don't know what the amount of fine was, I don't have a good idea. And then
We'd have to go forward.
We'd have to pull the reports, and they assess fees on your forfeitures every year that you don't use. So once that was one of our first questions, if you had forfeitures. And we found out the amount, well, it was $251,000, and what we did was we immediately applied those forfeitures to your contributions, and that's what the assessor was going forward. So
we
the
were able
money
to
that
salvage what we didn't get fined.
what,
We were able to salvage what we did not get
as
fined.
much as we could at the time,
Let's
yes.
understand how much we salvaged.
I think one of the issues at the time though, because Rush and I were on that conversation and came from a conversation that we had with them, with ACCG, was one of the questions that I asked was, what else is in this plan? Because when we looked at the documents, I couldn't get it to balance back. And so, what was the gentleman's name that came down and met with us?
I'd have to look up who was
Not
there.
Steve.
Yes, Steve.
It was from that
and
conversation
what?
that we learned that they had not gone through and done that.
And that was what you hired them to do. Okay, and it is done now as a procedure within your HR department. And it's done quarterly, and it is reviewed and quality controlled by me. So those things have been put into place. But I wanted to let you know, there's a lot of things that had to be fixed, including within the DB, going back to that, the defined benefit plan, that we found 63 people that were never accounted for before, and that liability was never measured. So we found those folks through the process of transferring over with the new actuarial. They were just documents that were just never, or documented through GovCorp, and they should have been. We did come to an overfunded status at one point that you guys were able to give an early retirement package to several people, which did bring us down underfunded after we initiated and implemented that. But we were able to bring that back up, which I'll show you those numbers here in just a little bit. They're in your package.
Well, and I will say, we're part of the board that when we took office did that because by the numbers that we could tell, we could take it to that place and we were able to save on our budget so that we didn't have to raise taxes. And if the performance was what was planned, we'd be back in shape and all those things did happen.
Right.
I'm going to say that.
Thank you. As you may or may not know, within a defined benefit plan, there are two vehicles that will support you getting to a funded status or an overfunded status or an underfunded status for that matter. And one is your contributions that you make into it, either by you or the employee or both. And the other is the investment performance, which I think most of you know that Both of those have been consistent since we've started, and we were also able to decrease the amount of contributions that had to be made, and another way that you have saved on the budget as well. So when we look at this, we want to look at this not only from the risk perspective, but also what your future needs are going to be, what your cash flow needs are going to be, and how you want to prepare for your potential risk. Any questions so far? Very quietly. Okay. All right. So history of the plan, we'll go through a little more of that with the numbers, with the outcomes of that. The investment objective you established, as the board established back when I started, and we adopted into the investment policy statement for the first time in 2008, which was written and adopted. The growth in income was the investment objective, the approach that we wanted to take. We wanted to reduce risk to a point which you guys had to get to a funded status, so we needed some growth. Now that we're in an overfunded status, we can look at our risk potential and see, do we need to reduce risk because you've already met your liability and then some, and whether or not you want to stay at the same growth in income, or do you want to go towards more preservation of capital. So we'll go through that as well. The responsibilities of the plan representatives. I'm going to go through that as we go through, but I do want to note these as highlights. The Board of Commissioners are also known as the trustees of the plan document. They are also the plan administrator of the terms of the trust. Okay? I'm going to show you a flow chart in a minute. I was requested to bring one, and so I did. That you can see the differences between the participant-driven and the DB and how that measures out with who you've hired and what they do. The investment committee is the full board of the commissioners. This was decided on November 3rd, 2009, and it was voted on that all of you would participate as the investment committee. There is no subcommittee. In some cases, for corporations and boards, they have subcommittees. It was decided by this board not to do so, that they wanted the full commissioners to be the investment committee. So we have to do every decision in public forum. Investment consultant is my company, Nichols Financial Group. I guide you and give you options, and then therefore you make the decisions. I'll go through.
Decision in public forum, is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, that confuses me, but go ahead. I'll think about it.
Well, in your
So whatever you
commission
want.
meetings, we have to do it in commission meetings. You can't vote on anything outside of that because it's the full commission.
I hear you.
Right.
I'm trying to process that, okay.
Yeah, that's good. Questions are good. Investment managers are also voted by the full board whenever, by guidance from me, that I'll give you options, which we'll do that in a little bit. But we're not going to vote on it. We're just going to give you information today, and then you can digest that. And if we want to put that to a meeting, then we will do so. Your custodian for the defined benefit only is LPL Financial. And that is my clearing broker dealer. That's who holds your assets. The asset guidelines are lined out in your IPS. That'll tell you the different classes you're allowed to have within your in your plan. Your investment manager selection. What is the selection process? What? That's okay.
I'm sorry. Do you have the flow chart on something that you could put it up here or what? Because I think like when you're talking about LPL and all, it would help.
Let's do that right now. I don't, but it's in your package. It's the second page after the cover. Looks like this. Oh, can you do that right now? Oh.
I have an extra one. Great.
I see
I can
it.
see this, I can see this, but I didn't know.
Okay. If you look at the flow chart, I did this as an overview. It doesn't give you every detail of each duty, but it tells you who you hired and to do what capacity. Now, there's two different flow charts, and the reason being is because the defined benefit plan, you have hired out certain things that are required for pensions, okay? And how you have it structured. And then the 457 and 401 is different because those are participant driven and have to be administered differently, okay? So, starting at the top, of course you guys are at the top, which is great. Who you have assigned as your employee and as part of her job description to maintain all retirement plans is the HR director, which is Rush. And then you have hired 3 people for the defined benefit plan, in essence, but you really have 2 contracts. One is HA&W. They do all your actuarial services. Now, what does this mean? They're the ones that give you the actuarial reporting that is required that every year for you to know what your future liability is of the plan. So you know, are we doing everything we need to do? What is the reporting? How much money do we have? How much your expenses are? And
Is that a local company, national company?
they're in Atlanta. HA&W is out of Atlanta. And they process that. They also process the annual statements to your employees that they get once a year. It's like a social security statement, and it says what they can get at 65, what they can get at 60, you know, so on and so forth, okay? So they do that once a year, and we'll get those around June. Both of those reports. We'll get the ones, the individual reports for the employees, and then we'll get the one that I come in and report on to you, to say, this is where we are. And that is done from the year end prior, okay? So we'll have that in probably July-ish is what I'm thinking for your meetings, and we will go through that at that time for the end of the year 2014. Myself, Nichols Financial Group, I'm your investment consultant. I'll give you ideas of what to do with the funds, monitor those funds. I also do oversight of what the procedures are within, as far as checks, so on and so forth of the plan, and making sure those get done. Underneath that is the mutual fund managers. That's where I give you, okay, these are some choices. This is what we're looking at. These are some things that are going on. And we'll talk about one today, which is PIMCO, because we had a manager change, and that sort of thing. Because Bill Gross left, and therefore a new manager is in place, and we need to make a decision if you want to do that and stay with them or not. So that's an example of that. LPL Financial is the one that is actually holding all the assets of the defined benefit plan. And the trades are made through them. And the checks are cut out from them. Okay? So now going over to the 457, 401 side, you have yourself at the top, and of course, again, Rush is the HR director. She's been assigned through her job description to maintain these plans based on what your terms and guidance are. HA&W is also there, but they're the plan administrator in this case. Okay, so that's a little bit different than your DB because they actually hold each sub-account of every employee, and all the trades are made through them. And all the contributions are sent to them to deposit for those accounts through an electronic transfer. And then you have me as the Nichols Financial as the investment consultant. So I will tell you whether there is a change of the investment portfolio options for your employees and when those need to happen. Now, under me is the mutual fund managers again. That's what I was just talking about. But going back over to HA&W, which is mytegraplan.com, is where all your employees go to see their activity on their accounts, where we check on things, the reporting and so on and so forth, checks that are issued, so on and so forth. MG Trust is actually the custodian for them because that's who works with LPL as well as with HA&W. It is a connection there between those two. So they actually hold those assets. Any questions?
So HA&W, they are the one that actually gets the money that we send them
That is
whenever we
correct.
send it to them, and they hold it, and they,
They invest it right
and
away.
they invested in, but they handle all the cash and all this stuff.
Only for the 457 and 401?
Yeah.
Yes.
In the 401.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Does that help give a clearer picture of where that goes? Is that what you want?
I understand your flow chart, but what I'm trying to figure out is there's a trust agreement for the defined benefit plan. And I'm trying to make heads or tails out of this, we're doing it according to this trust agreement.
You are.
Well, it says, first off, I don't know who wrote this thing, but it's in 2009, it said, by and between Effingham County, Georgia, herein referred to as the plan sponsor, and the Effingham County Board of Commissioners, herein after collectively referred to as the trustee. So we've got the Board of Commissioners as the trustee, the county itself is the sponsor. Am I right so far?
I'm following.
Then it says the plan sponsor has adopted the Effingham County Defined Benefit Plan, defined hereinafter referred to as the plan, for the benefit of its employees. Understand that. Plan sponsor by this trust agreement wishes to establish a trust. I understand the reason for establishing a trust.
Sure.
But then the authority to conduct the general operation and administration of the plan is vested in the plan administrator. Who's the plan administrator?
And you can hire anybody you
Who
want
has
to
the
do that.
authority and is subject to the duties with respect to the trust? So I agree with you. So now we're the administrator, and we're the sponsor, and we're the trustee.
Mhm.
This
And,
board.
Is the board.
As a
Call it
board.
As a board. Yes.
Okay? So now we are all of those. And the sponsor appoints the Effingham County Board of Commissioners as trustee. So the commissioner basically is the sponsor, the trustee, and the administrator,
In the defined benefit plan, yes, sir.
and the defined benefit plan. So my question is, whenever, I guess what's concerned me is movement of money
Okay.
without this board's approval.
Okay.
And I'm trying to figure out how this board, or when this board has ever given the authority to move money around to anybody.
Well, first, go ahead.
Does that understand my concern?
Absolutely. What I will say is that your fiduciary responsibility as a board, there are many functions, duties that have to be performed. And it is up to you to decide who does that function.
Correct. I would agree with that.
Okay. This is a live document, can be changed at any time, but the thing that you cannot change is that you are the trustee. Well, you could change it, but not really because of the
I
way that your
understand.
structure.
And I don't see a need to.
Right. But it is in the administration piece. It's just like you hire for the 457 and 401 an administrator to handle certain functions. Okay? The holding of the assets, doing the trades, cutting the checks, so on and so forth. Okay? Those also go through a process just like you do with the defined benefit plan.
So this board hired an administrator to do that.
Well, what you did is in her job description, you designated her as that person to make sure those things get done properly. And there is oversight to that from the standpoint in which we had talked about before, is that she will give and sign off on the actual forms. And there's 3 sets of forms that have to take place for us to actually issue a check. She signs off on it stating, yes, they've terminated, so on and so forth, and that this is approved to go through. then it comes to me, I have to look at it, and then I send it on to my compliance and money department to have it reviewed. And then there's also documentation that comes back to you in a sheet that states, this check went out to this person and it's mailed here. And then on top of that, it's also reported on the statement. So there is checks and balances, and how you guys decide to do that procedurally within your organization is up to you to set. If that needs to be a different person, or if you need to get a report once a month of that, however you want that done.
So you're answering my question by telling me this is the way it's done, but this board, the only place that it has been done is in the job description. And it's up to us as a board to decide if we're happy with that and if we need to make changes to that.
Absolutely.
Or if the clarity of, I don't know who's understood at what point in time where it's deciphered that the job description designated exactly those functions. Because in my understanding, when we do, let me just say what I feel, okay?
Yeah.
Because in the way that I feel about when I read the trust agreement that we vote on every year, we make decisions. So I don't know what year, what point, and what time that there's something put in a job description that when we're voting every year on an agreement that says we do this function, that there's some job description back from whenever that an employee has that they do that job description, is what you're telling me. And so I guess you're saying that Effingham County provided you with a copy of the job description so that you could be clear on that what in the trust agreement. The trust agreement doesn't assign anybody other than us. So you're
Well, and
saying,
it's also that the initial new account documents had to be signed by the person who could sign off on those check reports.
and all that's in the trust agreement?
Hmm?
And that's all that's designated in the trust agreement? What
It's
we see,
designated
what we
on
vote
the account documents to say who can take money out of that account or authorize it. And those documents were signed when we opened the accounts.
Well, I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that part.
And those signatures still have whose names on it.
Mine's on it, I'm not sure who else's is on it.
And see, this
And
is,
those can be revised. It's just like a checking account. I mean, you can change it at any
I
time.
understand, this is not a witch hunt, okay?
No, I bring this on. I'm one to
This
educate.
this is
good.
not a witch hunt. This is something that I've been concerned about to the point of even asking my CPA, who does several county and city audits. Because we have no audits of this.
Well,
And now we are it's going to become part of our bottom line under new guidelines. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Well, I'll say this for what my specific concerns are. My specific concerns are the way in which it's been handled from year to year as I've been on the board. I would have no way to know, except for what we were voting on, which was the trust agreements that said those decisions were ours. I have no way to know that otherwise, because there's nothing else that's come before me that would show me that we gave that authority to someone else.
Okay.
Because I'm voting that I have that authority. And so then when we make financial policies, because of audit issues that we have had, we go to extreme lengths to make new financial policies that try to cover every single basis where we're aware of every single check and every single amount of money that goes out of here. What we find out really in a little bit further research is that we have a situation over here where there's a large part of money that we're not, things can be going on that we have no knowledge of whatsoever, okay? Things can be going on with money that we have no knowledge of whatsoever. And that can't be, and that's not our intent. So,
And this concerns me for, as I told Rush the other day, for multiple reasons.
Mhm.
One is because we are the ultimate custodians of the taxpayers' money,
Absolutely.
okay? Number two, it concerns me that without proper checks and balances, in my mind,
Mhm.
this opens up Rush and subsequently your company and others to some issues that may not be warranted, but could arise.
I'm with you on that.
And we have found, this board has found several things over the last 2 years that has, we've tried to go to lengths to put checks and balances and put controls in place so that we don't have those issues.
I I understand.
So the only thing that I'm trying to figure out is how it's been done,
Mhm.
why it's been done that way. And then this board can discuss it and figure out, hey, because we are the ultimate trustees,
Right.
is this okay with everybody?
I actually have a resolution to that,
Okay.
if you would like it. I actually offered it last year when we did our IPS. I offered to do a fiduciary audit. And if we do a fiduciary analysis audit, then it'll go through every function that is required for you to have done and how you want it done, and then give you options of how you could do it or change it if you so wish or need to, or if you're not doing something that you need to. So I applaud that. I wanted to start it last year, and I have made efforts to look at certain areas already, but I can't complete it without you guys.
Well,
So,
there's one thing I learned, this has been frustrating to me in a lot of ways, because, boy, nothing changes quickly. You can see this need to do a lot of things, but it's taken a good bit of time to get things done. Some of these folks on this board have been here a lot longer than I have, and it didn't get this way overnight. It doesn't get changed.
no, and I mean, I don't see any major issues or red flags at this point. However, you don't know until you dive in. And so I think an assessment would be important. I have put a copy of the 22 questions that you would be required to answer as trustees in your package. That is correct.
Okay.
It also has a periodic table of all the practices that are required under law that you would have to adhere to, and I would investigate each one of those areas. I am an accredited investment fiduciary analyst. I am one of 65 in the world that can accredit an actual plan. So I am glad to do this for you. I am not going to charge you for it. However, I do think it's something that needs to be done. We addressed it last year, and it just hasn't been started. And it starts with you. I've got to have you answer those questions first.
And where is, you said you had a sample resolution?
The resolution is, it starts with that.
It starts with this, okay.
But you're recommending that basically you audit the work that you're doing on our
Know
behalf?
that you guys have in place. And then if you want to get it certified, I will have somebody come in and actually certify that is qualified like I am to audit my work. I'm just doing this as a prep so that it can help you guys save you money, because that's not cheap.
In a nice way, what I'm trying to say is we have found that well-meaning people in other departments have, because of just the way things were done, didn't mean they were doing something illegal or they were taking money, but they just started doing things. And it was outside of the scope of what they probably should have been doing. So,
And there were places where money was being taken.
that's right.
Convert.
Well, obviously, something has happened outside of the retirement plans that I am not aware of, but I can assure you, there are double checks and triple checks on this money. There's too much that has to be done for every check that goes out. However, I applaud this. I welcome this. And if you want to digest and go through and investigate every aspect of every function that is required by law, I welcome to start the process. But it starts with you guys answering those 22 questions, yes, no, or I don't know. That's all you have to do, yes, no, or I don't know.
Is it the 21 questions? Is that?
There should be 20, is there 20?
Separate, you know, we've got one company that's paying to do
21.
so for each service.
We changed it, I'm sorry. It used to be-
I'll make sure I'll take it.
You're right, absolutely.
And here again, you know, I go back to what my CPA tells me. Some of these county and city governments, even though they have not been required to, they have been putting it on their bottom line with their financials for some time,
Mhm.
which becomes part of their bottom line, which means it is subject to be audited. And pick parts of it. You know, they don't audit everything, just like a general
They're
audit.
probably auditing the money part of it, but they're not auditing the fiduciary process.
All I know is he tells me that they pick random things to audit.
Absolutely.
And
But this.
there was one particular part of it that, and I won't name it was a county
I appreciate
that, they found some general concerns which led to other
I'm sure that
things.
you're gonna see them in other plans, okay? And it all depends on their checks and balances.
That's
and
correct.
Whether or not you catch them. And that's one of the reasons we come in here with a quarterly review to tell you what's going on, how much money's flowing out, what the participant rate is, what the returns are, and if there's any red flags, we bring them up at that time. But honestly, we don't go through and digest and report on every quarter exactly every function that's happening or things of that nature, except for the fact that, you know, we have this much money going out and this is why. You know, we've had a couple of passings lately. Those are going to bring some big chunks of money coming out of the account. And you need to be aware of that. And which, when I stand up there, I'll tell you, you know, we've had a couple of big checks go out. This is why this is so high as not for normal. You know, and unfortunately, 2-3 weeks ago, we had 3 people pass along, and we're going to be cutting those checks here soon. So, you know, however, but those are reporting things that you can have. You can instill other processes in place for you to get a report, for you to sign off. If you want to be in the sign off, it's just going to be another day-to-day operation, whether you want to do it or you want her to do it or whatever. I mean, it's your choice. And this is a live document. We changed anytime.
This board has instigated or instructed or whatever the correct words are. You know, it's like automated checks with my signature on it now. At a certain level, they actually have to have a live signature. We require of our financial director to give us, I mean, we actually get a printout of every check that's written. And it's kind of it's time consuming, but I'm telling you, it's enlightening.
Sure,
And
we
helps
send a
us, I
statement
think,
like
do
that.
our job, just to scan down it and look. Now, would that keep somebody that was very knowledgeable from misappropriating funds? I would think so.
No, but you would catch it pretty quick, and that's the point. There's oversight there, and we do send a individual notification of every check that goes out there. And we also report it monthly. Now, how that is delivered to you, I do not know, and that's what that fiduciary audit would address.
So just make a policy on what we're going to require. And I'll say this, Jenny, I don't mind giving credit where credit is due, and I always try to do that. And one thing I've been really happy about with your services is I've been happy about the performance of the overall funds. But I will say, when any type of audit, one of the main things auditors look for, one of the huge things they look for every time is separation of duties, because separation of duties is where issues can come up. That's where they see problems. And that's a problem with how we had our trust agreement written and then what's actually happening. There's not a proper separation of duties in my mind, so that's something we're going to make a correction on, I feel, but that's concerning me.
And that would all be addressed in that assessment.
Well, I would like to address it before we actually fill out an assessment,
Well,
but we can get it
you
addressed.
can do whatever,
I feel sure.
you want. Okay.
And you, I know that under this trust agreement, we do everything in the board, okay? But I don't think any board member would have a problem with sitting down, you, me, a couple of commissioners, of sitting down and going through this and looking to see just what checks and balances are in there now as compared to where we might want to go. I think it would be a good working relationship to work through.
I welcome it, I do.
Okay.
Okay, anytime. However you want to review that, but some of these processes and procedures I won't see because they're not part of my day-to-day. I do review different things to make sure items are getting done. But she is in charge, Russia's in charge of the day-to-day, and she knows what's required of her to do. Now, how that is, done within the realm of your organization
I understand.
is yet to be, from me, in my standpoint, investigated to some degree. Some of it I know, some of it I don't.
And I understand it can be difficult to be asked these questions when we are getting good returns, everybody's doing a good job, and then we start asking these questions, and it wasn't.
Well, let me just say this. I have the highest respect for what you guys do and how many areas you have to be expertise at, okay? And it's very difficult for you to make the decisions you do. I welcome these conversations because I believe knowledge is power, and the more that you have to educate you is the more decisive you can be as making your decisions and feeling more confident that you have everything in place that you're supposed to take care of. It's fine with me. So, do you want me to stop? I feel like we're getting to a point where we need to
Yeah.
not go much further.
I really do, and what I would think we need to do. Joanna, can you talk with our auditor and find out under the new guidelines just what their requirements are going to be? Because the end game is to be sure that we don't have material findings on it all.
Yes, sir, I've already forwarded what I have to the auditor at this point. She is going through it, and I expect, this next week to have something.
I'd like to mention something about that. GASB 67 and 68 has come out for the new reporting requirements to take the place of 25 and 27, okay? The reason and the purpose behind it, whether you know or don't know, I'm just maybe repetitive, forgive me for that.
No.
Is that 67 and 68 were developed so that public pensions would have to report on their future liability in a different manner on the documents. It's an extra couple of lines on the reporting that they have to do, that Joanna has to do. And it is to verify that you, as the trustees of this plan is going to be able to meet those future liabilities. That either there's a plan in place or you've got the right measurables, okay, against the right bond fund return, against so on and so forth, of what your expected return is to meet those liabilities. Now, I will tell you, in the state of Georgia, I've mentioned this before, that your plan is special because you're one of the rare. You're overfunded. Most of them are not overfunded. They're completely underfunded to the point that they're having to stop pensions, freeze pensions, restructure them, and add a hybrid plan to accommodate for their mishaps and not having a plan. You guys do. So when you report, you're going to look like golden stars. Okay?
Well, we need that.
Okay, I know you, and I'm here to help you support that. But what I'm saying, you're 135 as of last reporting, which was, we did it in June, but it was for the year 2013. You're about to come up, we met our investment goals and was over our budget of what we were looking at to meet 5%. So we did it again. That means you're probably going to be overfunded even a little bit more so, percentage basis wise. Right now, you're over 135%. I mean, that's, when I tell my colleagues that, they're like, there's no way. There's no way you're that way. But you are. And so, I give you kudos for making a plan when we came on, and then we stuck to it, adhered to it, and did the right thing by the employees by allowing them to reduce their percentage in to meet those requirements as well as yours in the budget of the taxpayers.
And that's the purpose of these new guidelines, is to be sure that the plans are solvent, that
Exactly.
employees' funds are going to be there when it's time for them to
And
be
yours
there,
will
and
be.
everything's going to happen right.
Unless we do something really off the wall, which I don't believe will happen.
That's right. And my purpose is to be sure that every dollar that goes in there is as protected as it can be.
Correct.
And that everybody that touches that dollar is protected and has the proper checks and balances to be sure that there's no issue.
again, I applaud this.
Okay.
And I think that we should go forward with the fiduciary assessment to start with. If you guys want it certified, which I'd love for you guys to be the first certified governmental plan. There isn't one, by the way.
I would love that.
But I would have to hire somebody outside because I do manage a plan, but I can do that.
How much time notice do you need to make time to come and sit down?
Well, I mean, there's several areas to look at. I pointed those out in the practices. You'll see a periodic table. Those are all the areas that we'll have to look at. And then to answer your question to a definite, probably about 3 months, depending on cooperation of the departments.
For the full audit.
For the full.
Was that the question you were asking?
No, just to sit down and listen.
Oh, how much time we need to come in and sit down and talk about it? I think Mr. Kessler was doing one.
Would you have time next week?
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's different.
She was asking a different question.
And what I would ask all the commissioners to do is take this sheet right here, go down those 21 items, answer them for me.
All you have to do is yes.
Yes, no, or don't
I
know.
don't know. And that'll tell me whether or not you guys have a clue about what each area is in and where the red flags are. And
If I
that
could
Rush
get-
needs to do that as well.
I know. And if I could get these back together this week from everybody, then maybe Tuesday of next week.
That's fine.
I'd
And
like
I
to sit down.
highly request that you do this independent of each other. Please do not coordinate with each other.
But they can hand them all back to me.
They can.
But if everybody would go through that, fill it out, it may be some food for thought. If nothing else, that'll pose some questions. You'll get that back to me by the end of this week or by Monday at the latest. Give them Stephanie.
We're going to be filling those out as the administrators of the plan. That was the best.
Yeah. But I would want you to put your name on it so that I know if I got a question, who I need to call. And then any of y'all that want to sit down with me and Jenny, Rush, I would expect, I hope Joanna would have time to join us in that conversation.
We get set up with my schedule when I'll be
I'm going to stop there, but we do need to go over the PIMCO funds at some point.
Understand?
That changed managers, although they're doing okay, it's still something I have to bring to your attention because the IPS says manager changed. Yeah, we can. I mean, at least look this over, we can discuss it later, but this will give you, I have filled out a little sheet here, spreadsheet, that says what the managers' names are, when they started, the 1, 3, 5, 10-year, and inception returns, the expense ratio, which is a major factor, the beta, anything over 1%, anything over 1 on a beta means it will be more volatile. So that brings more potential risk. And in your case, that's where we are right now. However, I've given you 3 options to look at to either replace or add to. And then the alpha, that means they're doing better than the benchmark or lower. In these cases, all of these are doing better, but it's marketable in the one that you have right now. And then the rest of them are there as well for you to consider. I've also given you the fact sheets on each one of them so that you can see where they stand. I don't see a need for you to actually move right now, except it's against your investment policy statement, only because of the manager change. That's it. It still meets all of your requirements otherwise. So it's just a matter of whether you want to change the IPS to accommodate for this, or this one exception, or do we need to change to a different fund? I am not expecting an answer today, but we will want to vote on it at some point in the
Where did Bill go?
You had to ask me. Janice.
James?
Yes, I'm sorry. My brain was in another area. Apologize. And he took his heir apparent with him, or he left 2 actually prior to Bill Gross leaving. So that left the 2 major key players for that particular fund. And Bill also also invested quite a bit of money in Janice as well. So that's something to consider for another meeting.
So we could look at Janice also.
We can look at some funds there as well, if you would like. I can bring those to you. I just gave you 3 options that are,
I think Bill, wherever he went, I think it would be advantageous to at least take a look
I
at.
will bring that to
He's
the
a
table.
financial all-star, so
He
might as well take a look
is
at it.
a financial all-star, no doubt. That's why he was picked to start with. Yeah, I can bring that to the table, for sure. I just want you to be aware of that. And you can vote on it at another meeting.
Well, we can put this on the agenda to vote on that part of it.
Next meeting? Your next meeting?
At our next meeting, if we not.
Can you ready by Thursday?
Yes.
That's good.
What do we discuss?
We just have to add the agenda,
Yes, that's
that's
what
all
we're-
funds, Mr. Lush.
And I'll try to get you the James option as well.
And you can present that at our next meeting.
I can.
That'd be good.
Yep.
You would have to have all the documents to you by of this week.
All right, Captain.
All right,
I'll take care of it.
No problem.
good enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
You got a time that's better for you next Tuesday?
I will make time. You just let me know. Nothing before 9 o'clock.
Can't be before 9 o'clock?
No, sir.
Okay.
Again. Family responsibility. Thank you for
Thank you
your time.
much.
Thank you.
We will take a 5-minute break. All right, I call this meeting to order. Ask you to please stand for the invocation by Commissioner Jones and remain standing for the pledge to the flag.
Please bow. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity that we have to come together that's designated to do the business of the people of this fine county. We pray that you'll give us the wisdom and understanding of these issues and help us to make good decisions on their behalf. In your name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item, approval of our agenda. I'm going to ask you please to remove item number 2 of new business. They're not ready for that. I'll bring it back whenever they are. Other than that, I have nothing. Any other changes and corrections? Entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the agenda with the removal of new business number 2 removed from agenda.
Motion and second. All in favor? Any opposed? So carried. Next item, consideration of the minutes. First is the minutes for the April 21st, 2015 fire workshop. Corrections to
The
that?
fire workshop, they got Phil Keefe and Vice Chairman still here. That's one thing. That's big enough, but that is something different.
It has what?
Ma'am?
It has what?
On the
They got
fire,
Mr. Phil
on the
Keefe.
fire workshop, you got Mr. Phil Keefe as Vice Chairman,
Oh,
and it should be here, John.
okay.
The other one is okay.
Easy correction. Anything else?
Make a motion to approve the fire workshop minutes with the note change.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Uh,
Any opposed? So
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve as written. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Should be noted that public comment should be limited to the agenda items only, please. And that correspondence documents from this meeting are located in the clerk's office and on the Board of Commissioners website. Next item is our consent agenda. Item number 1, consideration to approve to renew the agreement with the municipal court of the city of Guyton for probation services. Item number 2, consideration to approve to renew the agreement with the municipal court of the city of Springfield for probation services. Item 3, consideration to approve to renew the agreement with the state court of Effingham County for probation services. Item number 4, consideration to approve to renew the agreement with the Superior Court of Effingham County for probation services. Item number 5, consideration to approve to renew the agreement between Effingham County Board of Commissioners and Alcohol Monitoring Systems Incorporated, AMS, for the use and monitoring of scrying devices. Item number 6, consideration to approve an agreement between Effingham County Board of Commissioners and the U.S. Department of Commerce, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, National Ocean Services, NOAA, to continue geospatial services and data. Item number 7, consideration to renew the agreement with Smith's Automated Commissary Services for commissary services for prison inmates. No questions or discussion? I'll entertain
Make a motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. First item, old business. Consideration to approve to accept the roads and drainage infrastructure in Hunter's Chase subdivision. This has previously been tabled twice. I thought it had been turned down until looking at it, and told it was in fact tabled. So back up for your discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I know there's a whole lot left to discuss. Like I said, we turned it down, or tabled it twice, right? It's the exact same thing that I put in front of you the last few times. I think the last time we had, the board had asked for some guidance possibly from the attorney that has been provided to y'all. Based on that advice, y'all can reconsider what you want to do. And I'll be glad to answer your questions on it.
Any commissioners have any questions or further discussion on this? Anyone read the attorney's opinion that was asked for?
Yes.
There's no questions or further discussion. The question before the board is either to accept or do not accept the infrastructure in Hunter's Chase subdivision. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve item number 1, accept the infrastructure in Hunter's Chase subdivision and pay the tax ability.
Second.
Got a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Next item. Planning Board recommends approving an application by Greg House for a sketch plan for 37 lots located on Ralph Ryan Road, map number 391, parcel number 2, in the 4th District, table from April 21st.
Good afternoon.
Good evening, sir.
How are you?
State your name for the record.
Greg House.
All right. Have we got the name right? I remember you changed the name on us.
Yes, sir. They said that you had another subdivision by that name, which we did not realize that, so we just simply swapped the name, reversed it to Wood Glen as the new name.
And is it still 37 lots?
No, sir. It was
26.
right.
All right, so the other question was that which was brought up, which I brought up, as to the, I knew I had it here somewhere, I knew I'd find it. Too many trees cut down. Is the county policy having to do with the improvement necessity of that public road. And I asked you if you would be, y'all would be willing to pave it. I think I asked for some information as to cost. I think the last thing I heard was y'all would give the rest of the right of way to make it a 60-foot right of way. You
Yes, sir. We
lay the rock if we would furnish the rock, and then we would pave it.
Well, that was the last thing said, and I think y'all were going to research, see if that was even possible under your rules and regulations. And I asked what y'all needed me to do in the meantime, and you said you didn't know.
Okay. What about the water issue? I know that y'all had gotten a letter of commitment from South Atlantic, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir. We have a commitment from them. They've actually already engineered the plans. They have an existing well that they can tie into without having to drill a new well. Their line is about 50 feet from the property. And they have committed to bring it in a timely fashion, which is very important in development.
So you've still not applied to Effingham County for water?
Do you guys have water available there? When I came up and talked to, in the beginning, I asked about the water, and it's my understanding y'all were not putting in infrastructure where you didn't have existing water lines. I also spoke with Springfield about it, and they didn't have anything close by.
Is that in the county's service area? So by nature, we still have to technically
We have to
deny service or something, it's supposed to technicality, right?
But we don't have service there, is that right? Right now, we don't have any, right?
There's no infrastructure there currently.
We have to drill a well.
Correct.
Is that something that we're trying to start doing is if we don't have it there first, have the option of doing wells first?
think that's coming in because that's what service delivery agreement says. It says that before a third-party provider can provide service, that the county basically has to deny service. It then goes to the nearest municipality that has service, and they actually have up to a year to decide. And then if they either cannot or will not provide the service, then a third-party provider, which is what the service delivery agreement says.
We need to have a policy for the developers to know what we're going to require.
I understand, and if you service delivery agreements were signed in 11 or 12, and this is probably the first development we've had since that was actually signed and put in place.
All right, so Greg, as I understand this, you are asking this board to approve your sketch plan based upon allowing South Atlantic Water to furnish the development with water, and for y'all to make no improvements on the road in front of it, only to grant the county a 60-foot right-of-way. Is that correct?
We certainly would be willing to give the extra right away. I have no issues there. The only thing as far as the road would benefit us is if it happened, right away, and 3, 4, 5 years doesn't benefit us at all as far as selling lots. And as far as water goes, I don't even think we want to go there. I've been waiting 10 years on water from you guys on another project.
If we were to approve this, couldn't we also at the same time deny county water and sewer, take care of that? I mean,
Again, this is the first one that's come through. There's no formal written process or whether there's an application. I would assume that you could. I mean, there's nothing in any of our documentation anywhere that says that we would be violating any ordinance or procedure, that there's some formal process to allow for the service to be denied.
but I didn't know that was new to the most recent service delivery, or previous service delivery. It's the same.
Probably did.
Another issue, these lots are all over an acre, so technically they can put their own well in. Except for the rule where the county has a rule about developing 18 lots or more.
We have to provide fire protection.
Right. Well, there's fire protection already there. There's fire protection right there by the road.
You gotta be within 5 feet.
Right.
I just have a problem personally where we don't have a policy already allowing, that explains to developers what they are going to be required or expected to do, as far as if we're always going to have to review first. I guess there's an understanding out there that we have to turn them down for water, but if we don't have, I just think if we don't have water there, and we're going to maybe go through some kind of process where we decide if we're going to use wells or not use wells and all that, but we need to come up with that as part of the process that they know is something to anticipate.
And it is in that development manual that's been sitting out there for the last year. That's part of it, that new application for water service, to where they apply, we tell them we either have it or we don't.
So we haven't approved it, and it's not in their hands, and they would not be aware of it yet.
Okay, and we talked about last year ago, we never finished it. I understand, I hear you, and it's in there, we just have never formalized that.
I don't have a problem doing it, I just have a problem requiring it so much after the fact when people they don't know what to expect coming up, and, we've already held it up prior to this meeting.
Well,
That we define.
the cost of putting in 2 wells, you have to put in 2 wells to get fire protection, fire flow. Under EPD's rules, you have to have a backup well and a minimum 5,000 gallon tank to get your fire flow. You're looking at a cost of, I haven't done one in a while, but probably $200,000, 150 anyway. For 27 lots, that just doesn't make sense.
I understand
we were optimistic. I don't think it's gonna be anywhere near that, to be frank. We're probably looking at 5-acre lots now instead of doing the other side because of,
The actual sketch plan that we're approving, that would we be stating one that we don't have water available, and if we did approve it, is just the, how many lots?
26.
Just 26. And there's another phase coming later. We can make,
There's a-
it'll be a separate determination at that time, right?
there's additional parcel across the road that we don't haven't had any design or anything, any soil work done, so all that's up in the air. Don't know what you can do with it.
I still think the question before the board really is, does that portion of Route Run Road today, would it handle 26 additional houses? That's the simple question. Either it can or it can't. If it can, what does it require? That's the question.
You can't maintain road. It's good to go. Yes.
I'll say I'm trying my best to find the actual policy, and I've got it here somewhere. There it is. Subdivision of lots on an unimproved county road will require improvement of said road by the subdivider as to be determined by the Effingham County Board of Commissioners. And that's what we're trying to determine. And I totally agree, that's ambiguous.
Well, the ditches out there need some work, and if we're gonna put in pipes, we certainly don't have any problem with going in and grading the ditches and making them the way they need to be, if that's a help. We also would give additional drainage easements if any needed by the county, in addition to the road easements.
Thomas, what would protect the citizens best on the wording of something like that about county requiring engineering for proper drainage? What would be the best way of a requirement in that regard to be sure that they are drained properly? Since it's not being.
This is a major subdivision, and as a major subdivision, it's required to submit construction documents for water, sewer, storm drainage. Now, in this case, the water will be done by the Smiths, as I understand it.
Right. We've submitted the first, whatever you call it. It's-
But there will be plans drawn that'll go to EPD for the extension. We will get those as reviewed, and we still have our drainage ordinance, which requires water mitigation for stormwater quantity and quality. A lot of times on these, what we end up with is because of just houses off of the road, there's really no infrastructure installed, because you're simply building a house. The increase in impervious is so minuscule till we end up not doing anything else like you would in another subdivision, because it's such a large area, difficult to track and impound. But that part of the construction documents would be, the design of the roadway, the design of the driveways, and that sort of thing. And you could have the sizing of the culvert pipes as part of that, to know that the proper flow is handled, grading plans for the ditches, whatever would be involved there. It's difficult on some of these, because typically what we end up getting is a plat and saying there's your construction documents.
So that's what I'm trying to figure out. Is there anything we need to add to the motion, or is it already definitely covered in the engineering, or is there something we need to add to the motion to be sure?
We have an additional engineer other than the water engineer. The Smiths have their own engineer that's handling water. We have hired an engineer to do what he spoke about, all the other.
Yeah, but that's for the water distribution.
Yes.
No,
This is a sketch plan, so then before we get the final documents to sign off on, there's got to be all of this drainage work and all of this engineering done.
yes, sir. And it's just a reminder, but that's done administratively. That does not come back before you all. Once you approve the sketch plan, there's construction documents that's approved on the staff level.
And that's what I'm trying to get to, because it's not a typical subdivision where it's engineered according to a typical subdivision, but because it's on a dirt road, is there anything that we need to say so that is staff going to automatically be able to look at something and be able to tell that the drainage into those ditches and the the culverts and everything is going to be appropriate, or is there some kind of wordage we need to add to be sure that we're providing that protection?
It's sometimes a gray area on the infrastructure on the roads, how much of the design that they're responsible for, because it is county infrastructure. I would say the only thing you can probably add is the design of culverts and sufficient design to ensure adequate drainage along Front Road.
Does your,
Okay.
our road department still set the grade and hubs and all that stuff? So they would physically come out and be responsible for setting the stuff?
Now, on subdivisions, what we would typically do though is we require the engineer to size those and come up with elevations on them, and then we would just set it based on engineered documents.
So, has anybody looked at the alignment of the road with the road across, Line Road?
No, I have not.
To determine whether this additional right-of-way is all going to be on one side or the other side, or part on each side?
The way our surveyor drew it, it's going to be the center of the existing road is going to be the center of the right-of-way.
Which should work. Didn't we determine that it was only like possibly a 20-foot or so?
It's prescriptive, it's probably going to vary on whether it's top of ditch, and it generally is going to vary.
It's a straight road, though. There's no curves in it at all.
Yeah, it's straight.
And
It's
it's,
a drag race. In my younger days. Which y'all are willing to deed to the county.
yes, sir. We've actually already surveyed it out as part of the plat.
What size right away, 60 foot?
60. And I have no problem on the ends if you need more to, if you want to turn the road where it approaches the intersection differently, but on the Ralph Run road in is straight across, so I don't see how you could turn that one without redoing both sides of the road.
Yeah, it's pretty straight shot across.
And then the other end, we don't actually own the part that touches the road. There's a little corner to the side of it.
So, would this be a fair statement that at the time of the final dedication plats, additional property would be given to the county to create a 60-foot right-of-way through there?
Yes, sir. I'm trying to see where it's written on this plat that's going to be recorded.
It's in line where it says Front Road, really within the road itself.
Yeah, it's right in the road, yeah. I see it there.
Shows, on that first diagram, it shows a 6-foot right away.
Yes, sir.
Right from the road.
I'll have to ask attorneys, I mean, is that substantial for a deed dedication?
I'm not sure what you're looking at, I don't have those documents.
It would be my opinion that does not adequately convey a right-of-way to us.
Yeah.
What else do we need to do?
I would think you need to plat over here, you can dedicate so there's a meets and bounds description that will come across, because if you're widening this down the center, you're only platting one side, you're not creating a boundary on the other side. So you'd have an existing parcel over there. So we would have whatever's prescriptive.
You want to plat with just the road?
That would be
Okay.
my thought. Or you could just add it to this one, I think, as long as it shows meets and bounds on the other side of the road.
As long as we require in the motion that he provide a 60-foot road right-of-way to Effingham County, then he can't do anything until he does that, correct?
If it's in the
Okay.
I think you could do it right here, then we could write the deed off of that.
Yeah, we would require a deed for acceptance, we can't do it just based on the plat.
But if we just say we're requiring 60-foot right-of-way to provide to Effingham County, that, we don't have to say all of that because that's how it's required, right?
Right, I mean, you should probably say it just to be extra clear.
Can you say by deed?
By deed.
Yeah.
By deed.
You said that the other side of the property doesn't come all the way to McConnell? Is that what you said?
If you look at the south end, there's a little
quality.
corner on-
Oh, okay, okay.
Just a little.
that belongs to Marion Durden, who's the owner of
How would
that.
that possibly affect 60-foot?
We wouldn't have any right of way there without independently going to that owner and acquiring it.
So do we need any other drainage easements or anything on the outside of that 60 foot or 60 foot's, that's it?
Here's the notes that I already based on what we talked about and see how you, if we wanted to approve it based on considerations we've been discussing. You could either approve, as a staff recommendation with the following additions, which would be a 60-foot road easement right-of-way provided to Effingham County by deed. Developer to provide sufficient engineering design to provide proper drainage, and possibly under A, county to provide a letter that county water is not available at this time.
I think what Commissioner Jones said about the proper engineering to verify drainage will answer your question.
Yeah.
Use your words, I copied down your words when I asked the question earlier.
I mean, Trey, I don't know where it will drain until there's engineering design. I would have to assume in almost a mile section, there's going to be a low point somewhere. It's not going to drain all at one end. And that may be necessary, but until there's topographic, unless y'all have it.
And we could add approved by staff,
We,
county staff, which means to sign off on it.
And I think you would have that in your motion, because then those documents will be reviewed by staff through Mr. Shaw's office.
I think the idea is just to not get into problems with that waste, where one driveway's, here
Yes,
for the
just
next.
to be sure it's done right.
you do not have a culvert pipe under the Ralph Ron Road, McCall Road end. And we would be willing to put one in there to make sure. There is a low area on that side of the road too that we own.
That's that little pond out there, Greg?
Yes, sir. Right now, all the water goes just about to the middle, and then it drains down through on a ditch that you guys dug, and then also comes across the road. Some of this water needs to go back the other way, and there's no way for it to get under the road there, so. And we don't have a problem bearing that cost.
They'll provide culvert at Ralph Ron Road
As we-
as.
Engineer, figure it out. Which is good.
Well, that's included in that engineering.
Now, is this to have shared drives?
Well,
Yeah.
Who told me that?
What's the theory behind that?
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
I don't know if that's.
I don't think they're appealing if you're going to buy a lot, but I have been required to do them before, and what I do is put in an extra wide one and still let them both have their own driveway. It's just at one location, and the line runs.
It's not necessarily a benefit, in some ways it can be a havoc, and it's not necessarily appealing, I agree with that.
I've seen situations where people didn't get it just right, and then the building department didn't catch it, and somebody goes to do the next, and then it's not on there.
You're talking about a property dispute, you're
Yeah.
setting up some neighbors.
No, I wasn't saying that I wanted it, I just wanted to know if it was,
The logic behind it is, give you the best example, Westwood Heights. When 21 was widened, they had to make a completely new road, because there's so many ingress and egress points of people getting in and off the road. It's conflict points, it's places for accidents to happen, it's maintenance on pipes, it's an issue on our side of maintenance and or safety is the reason for the limit
And
number.
the DOT recommends the least amount of.
Correct. It's to limit the number of access points to the road, because that's what causes back intersections and or driveways are what causes traffic delays.
well, without knowing what the total depth of these ditches are going to be, we don't require flare ends on our driveways, do we? County roads, we don't require flare.
Oh, so safety sections? No, sir.
I wouldn't think on her way.
On the dirt road.
All depends, you go down the dirt road or paved road, you know, it's flat.
Well, hopefully we don't have people drag racing like,
I don't do that. Any other questions, discussion? Commissioner Jones, do you have a motion?
Did you want to make a
Go ahead, make it, you got it written down. I know.
I make a motion that we approve staff recommendation with the following additions. Item number 6, developer to provide sufficient engineering design to provide proper drainage, approved by staff. Item number 7, 60-foot road right-of-way to be dedicated to the county by deed. Item number 8, county to provide letter that the county water is unavailable, water is unavailable at this time. And number 9, include in the engineering the developer to provide a culvert at Ralph Farm Road.
Second.
Would y'all feel comfortable as engineering dictates? If it doesn't need it there, I want to put one there for the back.
you're talking about the pipe, yeah.
My motion can be amended for number 9 to say as engineering dictates. As engineering dictates. In other words, if engineering says it's needed.
Are you good with that, son?
Yes. Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor? Any opposed? So carried.
Thank you, gentlemen, ladies.
This was just gate.
Oh, okay.
This is gate.
Can I ask a question about the previous item? I'm just curious.
Sure.
What, was that a different part of Hunter's Chase? What was the deal on that?
There was just a lot of problems with the roads in there, and we were,
Those were deeded to the county years ago.
Are you sure about that?
We don't have a record of it.
But not recorded, maybe?
We had a big checklist that we had to do, and we went out and did it, and I haven't got the tax bill on in 10
well,
years.
we'd like to find that, because I think the last 3 years of taxes that have been paid, and we don't want to have to pay them.
Well, there is a short piece that's not part of the road. It's part of the old road, the way it used to come back in behind it. If you remember, that property was accessed by easement road, and then we ended up dealing with Steve Collins and paved part of his property to access it from a different point.
Whatever that detail is, probably highly likely that the deed never got recorded. Can you bring us whatever you have record of so that we can
Sure.
study all that?
Oh, that would be a big help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So even though that motion and second that was passed on already, we're gonna pay the taxes, y'all, if we can get information.
They're not due.
Repeat that.
New business. Consideration to approve a fire services agreement with the city of Springfield.
Mr. Chairman, the county recently completed a comprehensive review of its fire protection services. One of the recommendations of that review or study was the consolidation of services, and in particular, and most immediately with the city of Springfield. Staff of the county and staff of the city have had, many discussions over a long period of time, and work on an agreement over the past several months that involves several different iterations too. The agreement outlines the terms under which Effingham Fire Rescue will provide fire protection services within the corporate limits of the city of Springfield, which would mean that Effingham County will submit service delivery payments to the city of Springfield, but in return would actually receive the fire fees collected inside their corporate boundaries. We would collect those fees from property within the city of Springfield, and those fees would be collected at a rate equal to the fees charged in unincorporated Effingham, with a small caveat that if there was ever a disproportionate rate, that it would be the lesser of those. But basically, the idea is to collect the same rate. The city of Springfield's current employees, which there are 3, would become employees of Effingham County, and the terms under which they would come in are specified in that agreement. A joint workshop of you all and the city of Springfield's council was held on April 15th of 2015. The results, I guess, of discussions, talking points from that particular workshop were incorporated into the agreement you have in front of you tonight. So with that, I'm sure you've all had a chance to read it. You should have 2 versions. One's marked up, has a lot of red and blue lines through it. The other is the exact same agreement, just with all that removed for readability, and an equipment listing of what will be acquired from the city of Springfield. And again, we've all had workshops. I think you're at least familiar with the basis of this agreement. If there's any particulars that you want to discuss, we can certainly do so. I think Mr. Bennett's here, Travis and Clint, so we've got all the people that can answer your questions.
All the terms, you guys got together and worked out those last changes in terms, and we satisfied with all that?
Yes, ma'am. I do believe that we are pretty much there at this point. Again, there were some changes from the workshop, and there were other changes that come after it, mainly the addition of headings, sections in here for readability again. Really didn't change anything other than just clarify the agreement a little bit. We did finalize the equipment list as attached. There was an appraisal, I guess, for better word. Basically, the 2 departments got together and determined what the value was. We didn't have a certified appraiser, but everybody kind of agrees that it's a decent price that we're all asking for this. There may have been a few other minor changes that came in. Again, one of the bigger changes was the Section 7 employees. And that was given all at the workshop. So it's the exact same information we discussed there. It's just actually been injected into the agreement at this point. A few small changes, like we had said that we would continue coverage on the beginning of the month in Springfield, and Springfield wanted to change that to just basically say they would provide coverage up until hours kicked in, so there were any delays, just again for the protection of the employee. But basically, it's everything that we. Oh, and one of the other was the original agreement that, as shown to y'all at the workshop, had all the termination dates at the end of December. We changed all those to June because we're starting in June. It just made sense to do that. But I believe that's basically what happened. There's really nothing else outside of what was discussed in that workshop, other than those minor changes.
Okay. So you're satisfied, and Fire Chief satisfied?
Yes.
Springfield satisfied?
Are we voting first, or are they voting first? Have they voted on the check?
We go first. Y'all's is coming on 12.
Next week.
Next Tuesday, 12.
But you and Brett have gotten together and everything's...
Yes, ma'am. Staff is satisfied at this point, and I believe this incorporates everything that this board and their council has asked at this point. Again, it has not been to them, but we believe we would cover all of our concerns.
This looks like it incorporated everything from Thursday's meeting.
Yes, it did.
Right? Any other questions? Motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the fire service agreement with the city of Springfield.
Second.
Motion and a second on the floor. All in favor? Any opposed? So carried. All right, item number 2 on new business was removed. Item number 3, presentation of the 2015-2016 fiscal year budget.
Mr. Chair, if you'll call 1 second, I forgot to get my thing to put this up there.
Well, what's the difference in this and this?
This is the short version.
Okay, gotcha. Ross, are you talking?
Hello.
Oh, yeah.
Understood. As always, our budget, of course, is a process. And so we put together a slide presentation tonight for both the board and the general public as to some of those pieces. First, of course, are our budget operational considerations. As we always try to create a fiscally responsible budget and a balanced budget. And the budget that we bring to you tonight is balanced. And so we're very thankful for that. It was with a lot of hard work from our elected officials, our department heads, and staff. And we're very, very appreciative of those people who had a great deal of input. And of course, the commissioners who came this year to sit in on the preliminary budget meetings. We basically have balanced the budget using a rollback rate somewhere between our current rollback rate and the anticipated rollback rate. And as you know, that's still changing at this point. I got another update from Janice today. And so we will look and see again in the coming weeks what that final plan will be. As always, we try to comply with our service delivery agreements. This year, we especially have tried to empower staff by use of the new software and technology to increase our departmental efficiency. We've also tried to improve our service levels to the residents and our citizens. We've leveraged the existing revenues that we have while trying to provide for deferred capital replacement of our assets over the last few years. We've also included adequate control over contingencies. As always, in the last several years, we've put those into Department 15 so that it requires the board's approval to use those funds. We have also been able this year to provide a staff, what we term a stair-step increase in salary levels. The goals this year, we tried to simplify. They were to present the board and our citizens a balanced budget, and to promote partnerships and teamwork to meet this budget and to provide quality service. The budget challenges this year are much like the years in the past. Our property tax digest levels have had minimal changes to them, and with the state mandated rollback, it basically means that there is minimal revenue this year as far as digest increase. We've had increases in the prices of consumer index, and so our consumer items that we purchase have had increases. We're trying to rebuild within this budget an aging fleet and infrastructure. And we're trying to balance the needs of the growing population here in Effingham County with their existing revenues. The slide that you have in front of you right now is basically just an overview of the last several years. It contains our 2013, 14, 15 adopted. It includes our requested for this current year and our proposed. Our proposed is about a 2.6% increase in our budget. We actually had about a $1.6 million difference between proposed and initially requested. Our current budget that we have proposed to you as a board is $27,503,688.39. Again, that's about a 2.6% overall increase. You will see that this particular slide gives you an overview not only of the revenue, but the expense. The next slide that you have is the proposed expenditures, and those are by category. And this particular slide simply gives you a comparison from year to year of what we've adopted and what we are currently proposing, and what that net change is. Again, that net change is a difference of $696,000, or about a 2.6% increase. We've done this particular slide so that you can see by category where the expenses are rising and falling. One of the things that we have tried very hard, I think, with the elected officials and staff, was to find different ways to handle the things that are needed, though our revenue has not increased greatly. And so we were particularly proud this year that we were able to bring a first draft to you that is balanced. The $27,503,000 is $696,000 above last year's budget. However, some of the things that we want to point out is that capital proposed in this particular budget is $513,000. That is basically doubled from last year. We were last year at $261,000 of proposed capital, and we're now at $513,000 of proposed capital. We do show personnel increases of about $503,000. Of that, we have about $236,000 that's for additional personnel in our EMS area. We all believe as staff and department heads that there is a need based off of the demographics that have been put together for an additional truck. And as such, the employees for that particular truck will cost us about $236,000. We've also included a longevity stair-step increase for employees of about $308,000. If you recall this last year, we had put within the budget about a $100,000 reduction in overall employee cost. I believe that we have met that, and based off of what I see right now, I believe we have about $180,000 in reductions. That's how we've been able to do what we're doing in the current budget. We have done that through attrition. We have done that through reassignment of staff. We have done that from the standpoint that if a particular position had not been filled and we deemed it not to necessarily be one that was crucial in nature, we have not replaced those particular positions. And so we've been able to do that based off of what we told the board last year and rearrangement of some assignments. Personnel changes. I think the board in the background, we had talked about the fact that this last year we reduced the overall jail staffing, and we're still in the midst of restructuring that. We have tried to keep those personnel increases to a minimum, and we are still working through that. We are looking at the prison levels to see where that level needs to be as far as staffing and also as far as housing of inmates. Where's the maximum revenue versus the expense? We're still working through that process. We did and were able to meet with one of the chief guys from the Department of Corrections who helped us walk through some of those scenarios. And so we will be discussing that a little bit more in the coming weeks. There is no proposed increase within this budget for healthcare costs. Historically, we've been able to either adjust the plan or to negotiate for those couple increases. And we anticipate being able to do that this year, or at least are in hopes of that. The current budget does propose a reduction in employees, but as we have said, we have done that through not replacing individuals that have left or retired, and we have withdrawn some positions that had not been filled and were deemed not to be necessary. The millage is one of those things that fluctuates. Our current millage is at 8.422. We anticipate that there is a possibility of a rollback rate of 8.336. We will not know that until the coming weeks. However, the rate that we are looking at as far as the rollback rate is less than our current rate. In that the digest numbers are changing, we will reevaluate this between now and the time that the millage is set. Some of the figures that I got, even as late as today, there's a definite shift in the overall digest. And so we're awaiting that from the tax commissioner and tax assessor.
Now, should you already estimated or some additional?
The shift reduced it about in half from the anticipated revenue. Fortunately, we did not budget that full amount of revenue with that digest. And so right now, as far as the millage rate itself, we believe we'll be able to get it at a point that will not increase or show a millage increase, but will allow for some additional revenues. The next slide that you have is the actual PT 32. This is what we get from the tax assessor's office. It's what the commission chairman signs off when we actually do our millage. As you can see, last year's was $1,531,000, and as of this particular PT 32 last week, it was $1,570,000, and I got word today that we're down to $1,552,000. So we will keep you posted as to how that digest is fluctuating.
There's not much of a change.
No. The general fund, as far as the personnel overview, as we said, we have slotted 4 new positions for EMS, staff, department heads. Are concurrent with this and believe there is a need, a much need. They've been holding for several years to be able to do this, and we felt like that we needed to go ahead and add those additional personnel. We did do the stair-step salary increase, the longevity increase, and that's at a cost of $308. The net change overall is $503, and that is basically due to the fact that we've been able to reduce personnel in different areas. One of the major things that we've done this year is to look at our capital. As you know, for the last several years, we have not posed a great deal of capital expenditures. And as such, felt that this year that we needed to, again, try to rebuild some of that infrastructure. Last year, you approved sheriff's vehicles at that particular point in time. I think we were able to get about 27, 29 vehicles. And so we are again proposing to purchase additionally some vehicles for him to replace those that are aging. The original request was for $649,000. We basically would like to do that the same way we did the other, where we paid for that over a period of 5 years. And as such, the overall capital, including last year's, would be about $300,000 within the sheriff's budget. Within roads, we have included $100,000 for smaller road projects rather than taking some of those things out of SWAP. It gives us a little bit of leeway there. Additionally, within general government, I believe we talked some about the fact that we really do not have many pool vehicles or vehicles right now that are substantially operational. And due to the gas mileage that we have on them, it costs us a significant amount to operate. We've included $45,000 as far as general government. We believe the total cost will be about $60,000, but we believe that in part we will be able to pay for that because of fuel savings. This last year, Deanna, myself, and staff worked on securing and moving our fuel to another entity. We believe that we will save about $3,000 a month or more, so about $40,000 a year. We also believe that the fuel economy that we will get on these vehicles will also help to pay for some of that. Additionally, in the EMS department, we are in much need of heart monitors. These are to replace ones that have been in service for some time. The total cost, I believe, is about $150,000, $160,000. We again have slotted this to be paid over a period of time because that equipment is basically used over a period of time. Recently, y'all had a meeting with the tax assessor where she showed you a new set of software that she wants to use in the field. From what we can tell, we believe it will improve efficiency and allow us not to have to hire additional staff. That comes at a cost of about $26,000. And we are just finishing up some of the things as far as the new jail. And the sheriff has asked for about $8,000 for minimal things that perhaps may be needed that weren't overlooked at that time. As you know, the life cycles of our particular assets do come to term. And so we are basically seeking to start to try and rebuild some of those things that we have not had the funds to do in the past. This particular slide is just a representation for y'all of our general fund expenditures by category. And of course, one of our major assets is in personnel because we are so service-based. Purchases, supplies, and capital. We're 68% personnel, and 14% purchases, and 11% in supplies. Most of these slides are to give y'all a visual view of our expenditures. And so this particular one is expenditures as far as the trends by service. And it gives you that information from 2006 forward to 2016. So you can see about a 10-year period here. We did categorize this as far as judicial and courts, and then general government, public safety, health and welfare, development, and then our other miscellaneous type expenditures. And as you can see, we have tried to ensure that we minimize costs as much as possible over this period of time.
Public safety encompasses which all things?
Public safety would include prison, jails, sheriff, EMA, I believe, some of the costs of 911. I can get you a listing of each one of those.
Annie, enough?
Yes. Not in general. This particular graphical view basically just gives you how that splits out. We, of course, right now are showing about 45% of our expenditures in public safety, 14% in just general government, and 11 in judicial. And so it's just to give you a snapshot view of how we are spending funds here. The next one is just a historical view of where we've been on budget, what our general fund budget was, what our actual revenue has been, and what our actual expenditures have been. And so as you can see, in the earlier years, we did have a different scenario. We had basically more funds than we necessarily had expenditures in most of those years, 2006 through about 2009. And then, of course, the decline as far as the digest and the economy. And I believe we have been able to maintain services as well as could be expected with those shortfalls in revenue. The next slide is simply a presentation of where our revenues come from.
Joanne, something I'd like to point out before we skip to the next one that I think is pretty important is just a note that historical information that budget that we're talking about this year is actually lower than it was in 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And I just think that that is commendable as far as the services that we've still been able to offer during this tight economy and what the staff has been able to help the commissioners do in providing services and keeping taxes down during that time. I just wanted to really point that slide out because I think that's pretty important.
Yes, ma'am. The next chart is simply to give you our overview of revenue, what our proposed revenue is, what it has been over the last 3 years prior to this. We are expecting that our revenues will match the expenditures that we currently have. As you can see, we basically are not expecting very much difference in our functional revenues. Slightly in our property tax. The major increase has been in our loss in the pickup of our sales tax. We had 2 scenarios, one over 12 months, one over 18 months. And so I took the lower of the 2, I believe we should come in about 5.9. As far as our property tax revenue projections, again, we will not know for sure until we get a better idea on the digest. That has been changing. However, I believe that we have budgeted at a not necessarily a conservative level, but a level that we certainly can obtain as far as the property tax levels without necessarily having a tax increase. Our loss levels, as you can see, the significant decrease that happened from 2007 and then starting to pick up a bit in the current year. It does make up about 21% of our overall funds to service. Our general fund resources, as far as revenue, this is just a chart that kind of breaks it out to give you a different visual view of it. This particular slide, we did so that we could show our per capita cost. If you look at the first column, our first column is spending by the actual category. This is per capita based off of 2010. At that time, it was about $526 per person. Based off of the estimated 2014 actual census, we are down to about $596 per person, or about $30. And we think that's significant. That means that we've been able to increase and maintain services while not increasing our costs substantially to do so. The last two columns that you see are based off of our property tax dollars. Of course, the property tax dollars we're expecting to come in is about $14.8 million. If you basically look at a household that's about $100,000, the assessed value is usually about 40% of that, which means that based off of our current millage, an individual household with a value of about $100,000 would be paying about $333. And then we've given you a breakdown of where these monies are spent, so that you can see by category how much an individual necessarily is paying for each one of those type services. On this particular slide, there is an error that I noticed on the 14-15. Our actual millage was at 8.422, not 8.427. And currently, if we roll that fully, it would be at 8.336, but that is still in process. And so we believe that we will actually be doing a millage somewhere between the 8.422 and perhaps that 8.336.
What day will we know?
They are working on it as we speak. I don't have a definite date.
What's our target date? Can we?
Our target date was actually this week. They're in the midst of finalizing that. I think they had some issues with LINCAP and some of the criteria there. I believe they were working through that today, and I will know more tomorrow.
Well, worst case scenario is public votes at the next meeting, or as far as the meeting.
We actually will not be voting on the village piece of it until later in June.
Yeah, but we vote on the budget, and we need to know
Yes,
the
ma'am.
budget. We need to know that for that vote.
Yes, ma'am. We anticipate to have that sometime this week. For those that are sitting in the audience, of course, our special funds are our enterprise funds, or have specially designated revenues. And so some of those funds are legally restricted as far as expenditures. We have a special tax district that is for the unincorporated citizens. And we also have sanitation, planning, inspections, and fire services. Within our SPOS project, we have done a project-linked budget, and so that is in conjunction with our short-term work program. As far as special funds, some of the highlights there in our personnel is sanitation. This last year, we had a reduction in staff levels due to retirements. We, of course, this year will be asking for 9 additional firefighters within the fire department. This goes along hand in hand with the agreement that you just approved as far as Springfield. That is at a cost of $518,000. Inspections and zoning, we did add some additional staff there due to some of the pickup at the window. And then within senior citizens, we did have a withdrawal of the position because it was not being used.
But the additional $518,000 in the new firefighters that we're adding, we have money to offset that that's coming in.
We have partial funds to offset that between the service delivery payment that we were paying and also the revenue that we'll receive from those residents because now we're in servicing them.
Get that
Yes, ma'am.
status so that the public would understand.
It basically pays for probably about 75%, I would say, of that figure.
And we were going to need to add firefighters so that we had a proper ISO in some areas anyway, so that citizens would be able to maintain their grades.
That's correct. This, of course, is the overview of the special tax district. As you know, we have funds under the service delivery agreement that come into that particular fund. That's our insurance proceeds along with our franchise and bills. And then we basically transfer out to fire, water, and sewer, and other particular funds that are needed, or at times need revenue. Right now, we believe that we'll need about a 1.8 transfer for the fire, about a 1.3 to water, and about 700,000 to sewer. And so we will need to transfer out about $4 million from our special tax district to fund those other funds. Some of the points of consideration, we wanted to make sure were within the actual discussion. Of course, we'll need to discuss the millage rate and that contractual agreement, and what those funds will bring in versus what the actual millage rate is for the current year. As far as fire budgets, we have put a section this current year within your actual budget itself, the larger budget that you got as a copy tonight. We put a supplemental section in there regarding fire, which has all of the different fire budgets and what we currently spending. It also has some additional fire maps in there to give you a visual view of those expenditures and revenues and what we're doing with them. And so we will work through that as far as what new stations we have in the short-term work program, along with defining agreements and mechanisms that we have in place right now under service delivery. Our short-term work program, if you recall, we went through that a few months ago. And so within the current budget, we have the last lineup of those projects and the funding of those projects to get us current within our budget versus our short-term work program spreadsheet. As far as health insurance, we're discussing the directions for adjustments and any or potential increase. And so, as you know, that generally happens after our budget is actually approved. As far as the adoption of the village, we have basically are going to need to set a date sometime after June 18th. And I believe Ms. Stephanie will discuss tonight possibly resetting that particular meeting in June, the second meeting in June, so that we can adopt the village at that time and not have a special call meeting. We will be going through the adoption of fees as far as fire fees and sanitation, whether or not we are posing an increase there or not. And then, as far as capital, we are very fortunate, I think, this year to be able to balance the budget and still increase the capital the way we've done. As far as agencies, we have included the chamber contract within this. One of the things we tried very hard this year was the library had asked for an increase. We weren't able to do all of the increase that the library requested, but we were able to partially increase the library's funds that they get from the county. We were able to do so by about $25,000 at this point. And so we have included that within the budget that we're going to be looking at. We have not included funds for Effingham days or for the fireworks. As far as the MPO, I think Todd's probably can talk more about as far as the dues there. Some of the things that we still have in the budget process is the landfill, the Springfield agreement, finalizing that piece, which I'll do this evening, the prison contract, and knowing of the buildings and county facilities, which we're looking at as far as how we stage that. I think as most of you know, we've had a difference in classification within our prisoners, and so we're not able to get as many out. But we are working with the Department of Corrections to see what we can do and have several avenues that we believe will be successful.
when I see you reference that you did not have to use a fund balance to do this, I think that's good at this point, because since we have a few moving pieces, if it were to become some type of need, then we haven't already used some, and there's some there, so that'll be a possibility for some of those other areas when we get into like health insurance questions or things
I
like that.
understand, and basically in the past, we've always funded a lot of the capital out of fund balance. In this particular year, we did go ahead and put it in here, so it could be within the board's purview to simply fund the capital expenditures that we're requesting at $500,000 out of fund balance.
Any other questions or comments?
Good job.
I know this is a lot of work, a lot of time.
Well, we appreciate greatly. I think some of the elected officials are here, and some of the staffing is here, and we appreciate greatly all of their efforts and their help. And we really feel like that we've been able to just sit down and talk and find new ways to do things.
Well, I personally got a lot of good comments and feedback back from some of the department heads and elected officials about how things went this year, and very proud of how everybody's able to work together. I know Ms. Wanda's happy because she had a much great need in her department, and we're excited that we're being able to do that, so.
He's up here.
Oh,
Just relocated.
all right. Mr. Mark, next item, consideration to approve to authorize the chairman to sign closing documents for the reconfiguration of the 802 megahertz rebanding process.
Good evening. Public safety radio systems such as those used by our first responders operate in several portions of the 800 megahertz band, which is also home to commercial wireless carriers and private radio systems. In 2004, to address the growing problem of harmful interference to 800 megahertz caused by high-density commercial wireless systems, the FCC adopted a comprehensive plan to reconfigure the band. Effingham County, in conjunction with the City of Savannah, Chatham County, and Southside Protection Services, were affected by this reconfiguration due to its registration of 800 megahertz frequencies. The documents in front of you will conclude our involvement and close out the project altogether. Therefore, I respectfully request option number 1.
And it cost us no money.
Nothing.
Any questions? Motion?
Make a motion to authorize the chairman to sign the closing motion.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Next item, consideration to approve to amend Chapter 75 Utilities of the Effingham County Code of Ordinances.
Yes, sir. George Shaw, zoning administrator. As you're all aware, we have eliminated collecting impact fees. We switched to collecting water connection service charges and sewer development fees. Part of that, or part of the impact fee ordinance, was a mechanism for refunding system improvements paid for by developers. That mechanism was not in our existing utilities ordinance, and this amendment is to move that mechanism to our utilities ordinance. It has been reviewed by the attorney. He made some changes, eliminating some language that he felt was required in the impact fee ordinance but not necessary, moving it to our utility ordinance. And staff recommends approval.
change.
Mr. Chairman, this is the language from our development impact fee ordinance on refunds with the parts that only deal with the development impact fee act strictly. So in other words, the more onerous parts have been removed. But it allows you the mechanism, the framework by which to reimburse developers should you choose to do so for system improvement. Our current ordinance in 75 doesn't include that, most likely because we originally collected impact fees and it was in that ordinance, it was never really contemplated. 75 was set up really just for things that were new capacity, the ability to collect, so there was never any thought of reimbursement for system improvements. But since you all have done away with the collection of impact fees, we need to provide that within this section here. And it is the exact same language, again, with the part stricken that were a little more,
It's because we came off the impact fees and changed it to collection fees. It's just another change in the wording so that we're keeping that straight, right?
the red stuff, yes. The red on here is just a change in the word. The blue stuff is where our attorney went through and said these things were in here because of the Development Impact Fee Act. So taking them out just allows you still the framework and mechanism to reimburse people, but takes away the parts that you have to comply with simply to meet the law, which was the more onerous parts of it.
It allows us to do it, but it doesn't in any way mean we have to do it.
Correct. Correct. It just gives you the framework by which, there's some process and procedure should you choose to do it.
That's the only thing that I want, that's the way I understand it. It gives us the ability to do so, but it's not mandating that we do it. Am I right?
Yes. Yes, it's just a procedure should you choose to do reimbursements. This is the procedure in which the orders would set out for what you do that.
And I didn't get to study it deep enough, but I'll, as long as that's the case, then we can always make adjustments to it if we find, little things that need to be tweaked.
And I just want to say, the impact fee ordinance is still on the books, and it still will be, because all of the fees haven't been encumbered and spent. I think there may still be some outstanding that need to be collected. And until that's done, everything's reconciled and closed out, then you can repeal the old impact fee ordinance.
Yeah, it's not on the books that we are currently collecting them, it's just still on the books because there are outstanding issues.
Right.
Right.
Gotcha.
Although we are collecting fees, they're just called by a different name.
They're just not impact fees.
Everybody understands that, we are collecting fees.
Well, we're following the impact fee ordinance in the use of those funds.
For the
Basically,
funds
for
that-
this,
The ones that are already been collected.
Yes, for funds that
Like
have
it
already been
exists.
collected and anything outstanding that still needs to be collected that were under that original framework.
All right. I got a motion for
Make a motion to approve the amendment.
second.
motion and second to approve the amendment. All in favor? Any opposed? So carried. Next item, consideration to approve to issue a contract amendment to Effingham Animal Hospital for veterinary services for Effingham County Animal Shelter.
Good evening, Fiona Charlton, purchasing agent. The county currently has a contract in place for vet services for the animal shelter, which expires on June 30th, 2015. A request for quote was issued, advertised in the usual places, and sent to local vet clinics. No responses were received, so staff asked the current provider, Effingham Animal Hospital, if they would extend their contract for a year. And they agreed, providing that the contract terms of 2 consultation visits a week at the rate of $200 per visit remain the same. The contract amendment was drawn up and runs from July 1st, 2015 to June 30th, 2016, after which there is an option to renew for an additional 1-year period, provided the terms of the agreement are agreed upon by both parties. Funding has been requested in the fiscal year 16 budget, general fund budget, and the contract amendment has been reviewed and approved by the county attorney. Therefore, staff recommend alternative 1, approval to issue a contract amendment to Effingham Animal Hospital for 2015-16 veterinary services. Any questions?
Same contract that we have right now, it's just changing the dates for an additional year.
Yes, sir.
Same funding, same everything.
Yes.
In the budget proposal. Motion.
Make a motion to approve order number 1. Second.
Motion and a second to approve. All in favor? Any opposed? So carried. Next item, consideration to approve a bid and issue a contract to FCM Incorporated to provide on-call HVAC services.
The county currently has a contract in place for on-call HVAC services, which expires on June 30th, 2015. A request for quote was issued and advertised in the usual places and sent to 26 known vendors. Quotes were received from SCM Inc., Covert Air LLC, Air Services and Refrigeration Specialties Inc., Augusta Chiller Service Inc., and J&D Heating and Air Inc. The lowest qualified bidder is SCM with a quote of $65 an hour standard rate, $97.50 per hour after hours rate, and the same rate applies for emergency call-outs. SCM offered 1% discount if invoices are paid in 10 days. A service contract was written for SCM running from July 1st, 2015 to June 30th, 2016, which has been reviewed and approved by the County Attorney. Funding will be taken from the General Fund when needed. Staff recommends alternative 1, approval of SCM's quote, and approval to issue a contract to SCM for 2015-16 on-call HVA services. Any questions?
Remind me, who do we use now?
Who do we for HVAC? Augusta Chiller.
Augusta Chiller.
Is SCM a local company?
Sorry?
Is SCM a local company?
I believe they're out of Statesboro. Let me just... Statesboro.
Which is where Augusta Chiller was based out of.
Motion.
Make a motion, we approve the contract with SCM.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? So carried. Next item, consideration to approve a bid and issue a contract to Thompson & Thompson Service Group, DBA Routerman Plumbers, to provide on-call plumbing services.
The county currently has a contract in place for on-call plumbing services, which expires on June 30th, 2015. A request for quote was issued and advertised in the usual places and sent to 16 known vendors. One response was received from Thompson & Thompson Service Group, doing business as Routerman Plumbers, at the following hourly rates. Plumber, $100 standard, $150 after hours, and $150 emergency. Plumber helper, $65 standard, $97.50 after hours, and $97.50 emergency. A service contract has been written for Thompson & Thompson Service Group, doing business as Routerman Plumbers, running from July 1st, 2015 to June 30th, 2016, which has been reviewed and approved by the County Attorney. Funding will be from the General Fund when needed. Staff recommends alternative 1, approval of Thompson & Thompson Service Group doing business as Routerman Plumbers quote, and approval to issue a contract to them for 2015-16 on-call plumbing.
And who do we use now?
We use Routerman, which is a different company. Road Router. Oh yeah, Road Router.
Was there only one bid on that?
I'm sorry?
Only one quote?
Only one quote, yes, sir.
What's the current rate? Do you know now what we pay?
$120 an hour for plumbing.
So this is actually under what our,
Yes, what our current rate is.
Let's go over the counter.
motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the issue contract to Thompson & Thompson Service Group, DBA Routerman Plumbers.
A second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? So carried. Next item, consideration to approve a contract to Aiken Harper Electrical Services Incorporated to provide on-call electrical.
The county currently has a contract in place for on-call electrical services, which expires June 30th, 2015. A request for quote was issued and advertised in the usual places and sent to 13 known vendors. One quote was received from Aiken Harper Electrical Services at the following hourly rates. Master Electrician, 38 standard, 57 after hours and emergency. Journeyman Electrician, 38 standard, 57 after hours and emergency. Apprentice, 26 standard, 39 after hours and emergency. Electrician Helper, 23 standard, 34.50 after hours and emergency. Aiken Harper offers a 2% discount if invoices are paid in 10 days. The service contract has been written for Aiken Harper running from July 1st, 2015 to June 30th, 2016, which has been reviewed and approved by the County Attorney. Funding will be from the General Fund when needed. Staff recommends alternative 1, approval of Aiken Harper Electrical Services quote and approval to issue them a contract for 2015-16 on-call electrical services.
Questions from the board? Motion?
Make a motion to approve order number 1.
Second.
Aiken Harper.
Motion and a second, all in favor? Any opposed? So carried.
Yeah, we sent that out to 13 vendors and advertised it in 2 papers and only one company did.
Yes, when I spoke to Aiken Harper, the lady said that she wasn't surprised because apparently with the new mall that's being built, that there's a lot of people are extremely busy with that. She said they've been very busy with it too.
Next item, consideration to approve to issue a non-renewal letter to Gas Boy for annual software support of the Rhode Island monitoring system.
Gas Boy provides software support to the system which monitors and reports bulk fuel usage from the county pumps to the fuel man. This support is no longer needed as the county have changed fuel providers from Fuelman to Right Express. The current agreement with Gas Boy expires on June 10, 2015 and will automatically renew for 1 year unless 30 days written notice is given. Therefore, staff recommends alternative 1, board approval to issue a non-renewal letter to Gas Boy. Any questions?
Question? Motion?
Make a motion to approve alternative number 1 and issue a non-renewal letter to Gas Boy for annual software support monitoring system.
Second. Motion and a second, all in favor? Any opposed? So carried. Next item, consideration to approve revisions to the vehicle policy.
The report that you have before you is based off of the fact of a review of the vehicle policy. As you know, we've begun to look at doing more with our pool cars and so forth. And as such, we looked at some of the language that's contained in it and basically felt like some of the language needed to be clearer, such as whether somebody will be provided a car or may be provided a car. We looked at things that did not seem to previously be covered or spelled out within it. And then we also looked at the IRS regulations with regard to this particular policy. As you know, the IRS does have regulations within publication 15B, and basically they spell out that commuting miles are taxable. And so what we did was try to go through this particular policy and ensure that we were in compliance with the IRS as far as commuting miles. That being said, people that report directly back to their place of business or their particular office, as far as emergencies and stuff like that, wouldn't necessarily be deemed commuting miles. And so the language that we've changed in here, and we can go step by step if you like, it's basically to clear up some of those ambiguities that were in here as to what can and cannot be done and to ensure compliance with the IRS guidelines.
I think I want to be sure I understand exactly what you said as far as the IRS themselves does not consider emergency vehicles going to and from home as commuting miles. For taxability.
Particular vehicles. If you look at page 5 of 7, the IRS guidelines specifically show what type of vehicle is considered a emergency vehicle.
Which section?
Section 4, under 8.
In the red.
Yes, sir.
Two from Belton.
Yeah, it says a qualified non-personal use vehicle means any vehicle that is not likely to be used more than a minimal amount for personal purposes. Common examples would be a fire engine, clearly marked police car, fire vehicle, public safety officer vehicle, a flatbed truck, a school bus, or ambulance.
Okay, clear. Put on the vehicle.
to do is simply make this congruent with IRS policy, and then to make sure that there are stipulations in place regarding the use of pool vehicles, the use of vehicles, period, and whether or not it is consistent with use for emergency purposes and therefore not taxable versus use for personal use, which are taxable.
All right. Any questions? Discussion?
Jack Garvin from Cloud. Folks, you pay these people very, very little, and now you're gonna get in the IRS and you're gonna tax them on how much
No,
they
we're not.
drive.
We're not doing that. You're
I mean, no, but I mean,
We're not doing that, you're misunderstanding. We're not doing that. We're adopting the policy, we have to follow the IRS rules, but we're not changing anything. We're not changing anything.
let these people take them home and forget it.
Mr. Jack, we are doing that. I'm supportive of that and always have been. That's not changing.
Let me say this, let me make sure that it's clear. If that particular vehicle is used only for commuting, then it would be taxable. Okay, so if they're driving them home and driving right back to the office, and there's no business in between that, then that is commuting miles. And so what we're trying to do is say, if it is only commuting miles, then that's either taxable and we have to include it within your pay, or that vehicle does not go home.
Unless it's designated.
Unless it's designated.
Designated as on this list, such as the sheriff's marked cars and things like that.
Correct, yes.
Who's gonna keep up with all this?
Sir,
Who's gonna keep up with all this?
this hopefully is to simplify that so that we don't have to keep up with it. Otherwise, we would have to keep up with the mileage used and add it to their W-2. That's what we're trying to prevent.
I mean, we have to comply with IRS.
Under the safe driving, I mean, I know emergency vehicles, they use their phones and radios. It says no county vehicle shall send a text or use the phone. Does that exclude all emergency vehicles?
What are you saying?
Over here under safe driving,
Mhm.
those type of.
Texting and driving is illegal, so I hope it not.
We text you.
They only do it in the high speed chase.
Usually they're doing that over on the computer.
Just kidding.
Thank you for that. We need to add no claim on computer while moving either. Another good one.
Any other discussion? Motion?
Make motion to approve as submitted.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? So carried. Next item, consideration to approve an addendum to the Effingham County's financial policy to address receipt and solicitation of donations and or gifts.
As the board is aware, you know we are quite fortunate to receive again many donations from individuals for various projects and for various departments. And what we try to do is to come up with a policy that basically gives the guidelines for how that's done to ensure that issues don't arise. One of the questions that we had was from Clarence, who wanted to do a celebration, 40 years of service in recreation, and wanted to know if he could solicit from individuals or how to go about that necessarily if individuals wanted to give to this particular event. By state law, we are able to accept donations, so that's not an issue. The issue is simply how we structure the receipt of those. And so what we did was to try and put some guidelines together as far as how that's done. We've added it to our financial policy as addendum 6 under our current section of revenues, and it basically cites the Georgia Code as far as our ability to receive those donations, but then also gives some guidelines and the specifics of what type of things that we're going to receive. And then the fact that a lot of those receipts are nominal in nature. They may be $25, they may be $100. And we didn't see bringing each one process that those funds are received, they are counted, they are deposited, no funds can be spent out of them, and that those things can be done through the administrator with receipt through finance. That information then be tallied and a report given to this board. In addition to that, as far as a letter being written, whether or not that's tax deductible and so forth, we basically put language in here so that once we tally that and come up with the receipts that have been received, it will go to the clerk. The clerk will basically pose a letter on behalf of the board thanking that individual for those donations and keep a list of what we are receiving in. We basically have, I think in your packet, you have an additional page that was added. The reason for that was if you look under section H, you will see that we originally put the animal shelter, the recreation events for within Effingham County, human resources for Employee Appreciation Day. We also have senior citizens and fire that receive in donations from time to time. We did want to make sure that the board was aware of any substantial funds received in, so we put a level of about $5,000 in there so that the board accept those. Those are generally things where there may be some ties to donations that are over $5,000, so we wanted to make sure the board saw those. And so this is just extending our process and procedures so that staff, department heads, and the board knows how this process is being done.
Like off the top of my head, let me ask you a couple of questions because I haven't. As an example of, say, emergency management and it's cold weather and they're asking for people to bring donations of blankets, or humane department and they're asking for cans of food or whatever. Is that encompassed in here somewhere? How's that?
Normally, I
So
would
that there's not a
say,
stop, so that there's not a hardship being placed on some simple.
understand, we had talked about setting a potential limit or something like that. Where we've had some issues is, let's say somebody goes out and solicits a piece of equipment or a piece of furniture or whatever else, and it can be substantial. I don't think it's for the minimal things, it's for anything that's cash or anything that's of a...
Do we have wording in here that is?
I don't believe we do right now. It's a very good point, and we certainly can add language that says anything of a minimal nature, cans donated or something to that extent, or anything less than...
Such as, and maybe a few things that valued out less than, something like
Yes,
that. I think we need to do that.
I think part of it was too was people soliciting donations in the name of the board when the board has no knowledge that those donations are being solicited. Not that it's necessarily a problem, but it would just be nice to know before somebody comes up and says, hey, I gave a can of food to your solicitation. You say, what are you referring to?
I understand the problems. I just want to be sure that we put enough safeguards in here so that we're not turning people away and saying, oh, I can't take that now because it's against policy or,
Correct. And quite frankly, part of it is some of the things that we do, I'm not sure who's setting these up, who's controlling them. And when we, go out and solicit donations tomorrow for United Way, or it's the door that gets open, who's making the decisions as to what we're actually collecting money for? And what happens when somebody comes up that we don't believe we should take donations for, who then makes that decision to say no, and can we?
And there's been a host of different issues, whether or not something is tax deductible or not. In talking with our attorney, that's something that we don't believe that we should deem. We aren't on the IRS website as a tax deductible charitable organization. And so we don't deem to send out letters as such or to make any.
Well, to clarify that a little bit, gifts and donations can be given to a local government or basically any branch of government if they're for a public purpose. So something like somebody giving money and food to the animal shelter is clearly for a public purpose, and that would be tax deductible. But there are other situations where it gets a little bit tricky, if you're talking about like donations of land or large donations of property, where ultimately it's up to the IRS whether that is tax deductible or not, and the county can't make that call. I think what Joanna is just trying to implement is a policy saying, you know, you need to talk to your tax professional to determine whether the gift you're trying to make is in fact tax deductible. We can't determine.
I do understand all that.
Yeah.
I just want some wordage in here so that we don't have individual employees concerned about the policy says we can't do that. So even if it just says something like non-cash donations of need to serve a public purpose for things such as, I mean, name two or three things are excluded. However you want to give us some help on that.
I think you're going good. Go ahead.
Well, I think that it's addressed a little bit in here. There are limits where if it's $5,000 or above, it must come before the Board of Commissioners. I think the policy is trying to say that.
But under the 5,000, it still has, what has to happen to it?
It's in the discretion of the employee accepting it. That's how I read it.
Is that?
It's in the discretion of the administrator as to whether to accept it or not.
That's what I thought, the administrator. So if he wants some blankets, this would tell him he can't do that. And I know maybe he'll do it anyway because common sense would tell him he thinks he can, but some employees would be concerned about it not having some wordage in here that says non-cash donations, a need for a public purpose such as, that's not big. Help me out. Somebody help me out.
And the food, blankets, or other donations of a minimal value, less than.
And I started out with non-cash, so, or other kind of donation.
I'm not even sure if I would go that far. I mean, if you want to leave it in the department head's hands, we could just put a blanket statement in there saying, you know, gifts with a value of under $5,000 are within the discretion of the department head to.
I don't know if they want to do under $5,000.
But that's not the way the policy reads. It goes to the administrator.
The administrator can also set policies to allow each department head to accept the donations or.
Well, we could do that tonight. That's what I'm trying to do. At least of nothing more than a certain amount. You must, you know, whether it's 100, 500, 200, I mean, I don't know.
So non-cash donations, such as cans of foods, blankets, or gifts of a minimum value less than $50.
100.
100?
Well,
Okay.
I'm saying 100 too, unless it's some kind of federal law that we're not complying with, but yeah, sure.
Okay.
Dollars can be.
Can be
received or
accepted.
Accepted by the sheriff department.
Might even want to put in there given for a specific immediate need or something like that.
Walmart used to give, they have a bag that was ruptured or something, they used to give to the animal shelter. Would they still have to come through y'all to do this?
No, and that's what we're trying to
That's what I'm
clarify
trying to
here.
do. That's this word.
That's
right
exactly
here.
why-
All of it.
That's exactly why we put the wording in here about the animal shelter and these other, so that we do not preclude that. We most surely want to accept those donations to help with any projects that we're doing, and certainly for the good of the community.
And we can tweak and improve this. I just at least want some kind of wording in here tonight if we approve this now that had a comfort level on that.
What you're trying to just, for a particular drive or event.
We're trying to prevent things like somebody going out and soliciting things that the board does not know they're doing, or the
Different
administrator.
types of departments taking in money. This month, they took in 1,500 for this, and this month they took in 5,000 for this, and nobody knows about it.
Where funds are gathered and they're off the books and they're being spent based off of no one's understanding. Well, what we're trying to learn there is we have had solicitations where there was equipment or furniture or whatever else, and the issue there is where is it? If it was solicited on your behalf, where is it?
Let's keep up with what we're supposed to keep up with.
So will this require a second reading?
Okay?
It would not apply, well, no, sir. I mean, y'all can defer it, but it's a policy, it doesn't require 2 readings. It's not ordinance.
Personally, I'd like to see those changes and give it back to us for, if I'm asked about them.
Okay, I was gonna word it, but you want to use a better word.
I don't interfere with,
Is this time sensitive?
No, what they're supposed to do is in July, we were trying to affect this prior to that, so that if he was gathering funds, now for this event, that, he was able to do so.
well, I just don't want to put it on.
Your call.
I think either way, you're understanding.
You know, be trying to, I agree,
I would rather see these corrections put in a document and presented so that we could read it and know what exactly the finished document.
You certainly can, and we'll bring it back to you.
Because you could do that and have it on the next agenda
Yes, sir.
and just put it down for a vote.
We just table this to the next one.
I would prefer that.
Make a motion to table this item to the next agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second to table it to our next agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Next item, consideration to approve a warranty deed. To accept the water system and related infrastructure and covered bridge subdivision.
Covered Bridge subdivision was constructed in 2007. And to date, the infrastructure has never been transferred to Effingham County. The subdivision itself is a gated community, and such the streets are private, not owned or maintained by the county. But the owner of the subdivision, which is South Georgia Bank, I do believe, does not wish to dedicate the streets. When we discussed it, I specifically asked that question. They did not want to dedicate the streets, only the water system. The phase that is constructed now is on Effingham County surface water, but it's on individual septic tanks. So the only infrastructure in there is water. There have been more than one inspection, and there were some deficiencies, all of which have been corrected to the satisfaction of our water department. A deed was provided by the South Georgia Bank and reviewed by our attorney. Our staff to recommend acceptance of that infrastructure.
Okay, I didn't see staff recommendation on here, but it is to accept.
It is somehow we got missing. I don't know how
Okay.
Why would they not want to dedicate the road?
because
Is it gated?
Because it's gated. And I understand that there may be open sometimes, not at others, but in order to preserve that,
But the homeowners are not going to own
and again, there may be some homeowners that want to, but the person actually owns title to it, the bank that did not want to. We specifically discussed that.
Are those gates functional? Do they?
I believe they're functional, whether they function or not, whether they actually open.
I've never seen them down.
I drive by every morning.
I had an attorney that lives in there tell me he's not sure the law technically makes them private, but I told him he thought that was the case to bring us the information.
There you go.
Well, and again, either way, the person that owns title does not want
He's
to,
not ready to do it.
doesn't want to do
Put that out
it,
for
so.
him. Yeah.
Now, they may change their mind, but.
Would the roads typically, would he deed them, would the owner to deed them to an owner association or something? I mean, they wouldn't want to just maintain them forever.
If they would do that, they'd give them to us.
But I mean, that's not our issue.
Possibly, but the homeowners association is generally controlled by the debtor until a certain point, which is the bank, which is in effect the same thing. But I'll be honest with you, I don't know exactly if they've been needed for homeowner association or not. We did make sure that we had adequate easements across that for ingress, egress, and maintenance of our facilities, since they're not our rights of way.
Roads get bad, they'll need them to.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You don't have to worry about getting them, we'll get them.
All right. Motion?
Make the motion to accept the order of structure.
resolution authorizing the filing of an application with the Georgia Department of Transportation and the U.S. Department of Transportation for a grant for public transportation assistance.
Effingham County participates in the Regional Rural Public Transportation Program, which is administered by the Coastal Regional Commission, and we have done so for several years now. Because of Section 5311 regional application incorporates multiple counties, the CRC basically acts as a joint applicant, so they assume all the responsibility on behalf of the counties for the administration of that program. And the state has asked the CRC for an authorizing resolution from each participating county to be provided this particular year in lieu of the 5311 application. Normally it's just an application, but every so often they want these authorizing resolutions. The resolution authorizes the CRC executive director to file an application and assurances or any other documents required by the U.S. Department of Transportation and Georgia Department of Transportation for the application for public transportation assistance and to effectuate the purposes of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It further authorizes the CRC executive director to execute grant contract agreements with both entities in connection with that same funding. And it requires that Effingham County have available the required non-federal shared regional rural and coordinated public transportation system funds on hand, which is incorporated into our budget for the fare box funds each year. Historically, it has been about $20,500 our portion of the funds that are required. Now that will fluctuate based on ridership and or the funds. It's basically 20%. They have to match 20% of the fare box. The feds pick up the other 80%. So it just depends on the program, how it goes, what they collect, what's in there. But historically, it runs about $20,500 a year, which is included in Department 51 other agencies in your budget. So with that, staff would recommend that we authorize the chair to execute this resolution so that CRC can apply for funds.
We can't provide the transportation that they provide for that.
No. And again, this is the coastal regional coaches. We're talking about the Telluride, basically the on-demand transportation system. And no, we can't operate for 20,000. We couldn't even buy one vehicle for that.
Ready? You're on that board.
Yes, sir. You want me to make a motion?
I think you should.
Make a motion to approve, order number 1.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor? Any opposed? So carried. Next item, consideration to approve to authorize the chairman to execute a special service agreement with Republic Services.
Republic Services removes the sludge from our wastewater treatment plant. These are all the things that come off the belt press after all the processes happen. The plant has used Republic to dispose of the sludge basically since it opened, since the inception. And they require a special waste service agreement before they'll remove any of it. This is an agreement that is good for 3 years. Basically, the base agreement out of all this, you'll see this is a renewal, is in our residential contract with Republic, which includes the fee for roll-off disposal. So they're handling the fees under our residential contract for the roll-off disposal. This is just a special waste service agreement. Because it's coming out of the treatment plant, they have to perform certain tests on the waste, basically to make sure it's not hazardous. And so once they deem that it's non-hazardous, which has already happened, we execute this 3-year agreement. And you will notice on the number 4 term of agreement, it's effective for blank months, commencing blank, that is supposed to be a 36-month agreement. That needs to say 36 there. I forgot to fill that in, so I apologize. But it is a 36-month agreement. And basically, excuse me, for disposal of waste at the treatment plant.
Did you say this is just a renewal?
It is a renewal. This happens every 3 years.
Motion.
Make a motion to approve staff or recommendation alternative number 1.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor? Any opposed? So carried. Next item, consideration to approve to authorize the chairman to execute a memorandum of understanding for the Coastal Region Metropolitan Planning Organization.
The reapportionment process is necessitated by the 2010 census expansion of the Savannah urbanized area into Effingham County. Federal law requires that the Corps NPO's metropolitan planning area boundary expand to include parts of Effingham County. As a result, it is necessary to update the MPO and advisory committee's membership, bylaws, and MOU to reflect the current requirements and the expanded planning area membership. The MPO board has requested that all MOUs are approved by May 15, 2015. This is to meet the requirements in the federal documents for doing this in time. MOU establishes responsibilities for each member organization and the MPO planning boundary and the dues to be paid by each organization. The bylaws actually establish the votes and the membership of each of the policy committee, TCC, ADAC, and CAC. That is established in the bylaws, which you are not approving now, you're only approving the MOU. To note, the planning boundary in Effingham County is the urbanized area only. It is what we previously instructed the court to do. The proposed dues are set at $14.70, and there's a big long formula we can go over in a minute. So with that said, that's the background. You have a really thick set of documents in front of you. Clearly, one of them is the MOU. As I said, it sets out the responsibilities of each organization that's a part of this. One being Corps NPO, and us obviously being a party to it, along with all the municipalities in Chatham County and Richmond Hill. Federal highway as well, and GDOT. So it sets that up. I will say there's nothing in here that on our side of responsibility that we can't adhere to that's really anything different than what we do today. Then there's a whole lot of signature pages, because there's a signature page for every single entity to sign on. So there's 13, 15, 20 or so of those. And then you'll see on page 25 and 55, the actual planning area. You can see Effingham is just the urbanized area that we have talked about.
Did we get a vote?
Yes, sir. That's not in this document, that's in the bylaws. And if you go on to 2755, this whole big write-up is their contribution formula. Basically what they came up with was a base of $1,000 and then your proportionate share of the population. It is in effect what they did. So ours was 1455 population, which is 0.53% of the overall MPA. So that coupled with our $1,000 base gets us to the 1470. The bylaws here have been approved by each of the individual committees. Let me see if I can find a real quick list somewhere. Of all the committees. The TCC, which is the Technical Coordinating Committee, the Citizens Advisory Committee, Economic Development, Freight Advisory Committee, and Advisory Committee on Accessible Transportation. Each of those have approved the bylaws. The Policy Committee has yet to do so. The main voting board of the MPO, it was presented to them at their last meeting. I believe they'll take it up at the next meeting, which is 2 months from now. But the voting members are listed on page 32 or 55 of the proposed bylaws that do still say draft on them. And you will see chairman or designee of Effingham County Commission is a voting member of the full MPO board. So it's either you or a designee, should you choose to do that. There's some non-voting members, duty responsibility officers, one.
And then you with the population in that area on the census.
I'm sorry.
How often can that 1470 or whatever change?
Yearly.
Yearly.
Yes.
Did you see this on page 28?
Basically,
It actually breaks it down.
The bottom line says that the federal law expanded parts of the requirements to include Effingham County. I mean, you really don't have a choice to.
We don't have a choice to become a part of the MPO. We want to receive federal money. It's my understanding that there's no requirement for pay to play, if you will. We're not required to pay dues, should we choose not to.
And it only took them 2.5 years to come up with it.
Yeah.
executed.
Now, to say that, part of where the dues come from is the core, the NPO adopts a unified work planning, UWPW, unified work. It's basically their budget. And that budget's adopted every year by the core board, and it includes in it all the things the NPO is going to do for staffing, for studies, for plans of all the funds they get and how they're spent. And part of that is the matching of federal dollars. Like any other program, they have to put 20 cents on every 80 to get the full dollar that the federal government gives them. So where that match comes from is the member organizations, local governments. It's currently coming from Chatham County and City of Savannah. None of the other entities pay. They're all being asked to pay, some of which have voted on this, some of which have not yet. I think some of them have approved it. I think the first was actually Vernonburg, which has about 50 people.
122.
122, sorry, grossly underestimated.
They're all small. I mean, there's only a couple less than us.
And you'll see, like on the TCC, we get a vote there, Effingham County, which is a staff representative. The TCC is the technical board. It's generally made up of technical staff. If you look, it's a lot of engineering staff from other places. On the Economic Development and Freight Advisory Committee, we actually have representation on that. Effingham County Industrial, the director of Effingham County Industrial Development Authority has a seat in that particular committee. There's also the CAC, we have at least one appointment. The CAC, and that's a citizen, that will be citizen advisory committee. So we would have at least one appointee. Local to one of the voting members. The total is 15, consists of, and Effingham County is one of those. So Effingham County has one seat on that.
So we have to belong, I know that as federal, to get any federal funding. Now, since part of our parkway funds right now is coming out of actual federal earmark, would it stop?
No.
I didn't think.
It's not within their planning area.
That's not within their planning.
Except for the portion in Chatham County,
That's right.
which is currently included in their TIP and in their long-range transportation plans. So that part, yes, has to be included in the Chatham County portion.
So when you say we have to belong, but we might not have to pay, that's probably not a wise choice.
Somebody has to pay.
Yes, because when it was $50,000 when he started out, that was an argument.
That was an argument. We're down to $1,500 now.
I think it's worth us paying this to play.
Yeah. I don't disagree. And can they change? Yes, they can change every single year like any other dues, and it will. But what I would point out is that due structure will then be controlled by the policy committee of the core NPO board, of which we are one vote. We certainly can't, but we do have a vote at that table to, as will all the other entities who will then be trying to increase dues on too. It should they choose to.
And you can stop paying at any time, right? I mean,
You should be able to.
If it got out of hand.
You should be able to, as long as all the other entities are disproportionately affected as well. I believe they are. They all have a seat at the table as well. They meet bi-monthly as we do now.
I said it's come a long way.
Yeah, really has.
Any other questions? Motion?
Motion to authorize the chairman to execute MOU.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Last item on our agenda. Go ahead.
You have attached the monthly report for the month of April for animal control. Gives you some numbers on their intake, outtake, disposition of animals. Benton Boulevard PIOH that was tonight, actually 5 to 7, it's just now getting over. That is the extension of Benton Boulevard. There is also a memo in your package that came from, I can't remember Leon or Nathaniel, but from Chatham County on the status of that project, actually from the county engineer. If y'all want to read it, it just tells you where they're at on their process. There's a list status acceptance of subdivision roads. In November 5th of 2013, you all voted to accept 31 different subdivisions, I count number of streets, within those 31 subdivisions. Over that time, we've been working on it. We've actually been able to obtain titles for 11 of those and 4 that were not on that original list. And you have a list in front of you, the sort of peachish color or whatever that is, are the ones that we've taken. The other ones are the ones that we have not. Some of which, because it's difficult to obtain title, some of which, Kate's Cove is one that when we approached it was similar to Covered Bridge. Some residents in there wanted us to take them, but the person that held title did not want to give it up. So we can go over if you want, but there's reasons for some of them, but we continue to work on that list as we can. CRC non-public representative reappointment appointment. Mr. Herb Jones is currently the non-public CRC appointment for Effingham County, which includes the cities of Gathering and Springfield. He was last appointed in July 14 and his term is expired. We need to appoint, either reappoint Mr. Herb or appoint someone in his place. To do so, the CRC needs a letter signed by a chairman, copied by the mayors confirming the concurrence of the appointment of all of us. So it's a concurrent appointment. We all have to agree at each of the 3 municipalities and the county. So we'll need to move forward with that here in the near future. We just need some direction from you all. If you want that to reappoint Mr. Herb or to find someone new.
Have we reached out to Mr. Herb yet?
He wants to be reappointed, Dave.
Okay.
If he wants to and you all are fine with it, we will proceed forward with contacting the cities to see if they're okay with it. And if so, we'll need to get that on an agenda to vote, to authorize chairman to sign that letter.
Anyone opposed to that? Go for it.
Okay, we'll move forward with that. Received basically a save the date from United Way. They'll be celebrating 25 years of service to Effingham County, and they're going to have a celebration of that on Tuesday, June 23rd from 5 to 7 with a brief program beginning at 6. More information forthcoming. I don't know where it's at or anything yet. It's just the ones y'all told today. So do so. Effingham Parkway PIOH. You also have in your package a summary of all comments received and proposed responses to that at this point. Those proposed responses have been sent to GDOT. As soon as they go over them, and if they have any suggestions or alterations or changes, once we get through that process, a final formal letter with final responses will be issued. Things not on your list. We have a number of pump stations and wells within residential subdivisions that are currently surrounded by wooden privacy fences. A lot in the state of disrepair. Many of them are not properly filled out of great materials initially. We would like to be able to replace those with a more durable chain link fence, but that has some implications as to people's ability to view the infrastructure within, the unsightliness of it. So what I'm asking this board is there an objection to possibly looking at replacing those with chain link fences with maybe those woven slats that go through? That's a little more durable, but not, you can't necessarily see straight through. Or would you like to start replacing these? We have to replace the fences, they're coming back.
And where are they?
I don't have a complete list, but in various subdivisions, as we accept either lift stations and or wells, they're enclosed by fences that the developer generally puts up, and we accept them. As with any piece of wood, it deteriorates over time, and it's going to need, repair.
And the question is there any covenants in those neighborhoods that would prohibit chain link fences?
That's an excellent question. I don't know the answer.
That we may not be bound by, but I think as good neighbors, we would have a lot of opposition chain link up in a neighborhood that requires wood fix.
I personally don't have a problem with you doing it where we verify that's not a problem, you know.
I would think it would be better for us to put the chain link rather than the wood if we can.
Always would have been better.
Maintenance wise, now I think going forward, this is another what Commissioner Jones said, we need to put this in our policies and our standard details for a chain link fence. That way, if there's an issue with the developer saying, well, it's unsightly, he can tuck it in a location that's not, that's incumbent on them to do so.
Do that, plus the fact now, you know, it's coded. If we put chain link up, let's put a green coated or a black coated.
Correct, we want to do something nicer and I agree. So I'll check on the covenants, and if not, is there an opposition to maybe moving forward with an aesthetic type chain link fence?
Any opposition? That's it.
Okay, thank you. And the last thing I've got is, and I'll take any input that you have on this is, and I don't know exactly what this looks like yet, but I want to change the format of these reports that I give to y'all monthly. Right now, we just give you status updates on things that come up. We've recently had some issues with bids that were done. We want to make sure that y'all are informed of everything that goes on. So I'm probably going to change those maybe department by department, that list, you know, bids of any sort that's upcoming, that's in process, and tracking through of any other projects that go on, upgrades to our website, all the things that we do on the staff level that we have reports and lists on, we're probably going to give to y'all. So I'll take a stab at what that format looks like. And if y'all want to add or track, what I don't want to do is overwhelm you with too much stuff that you don't look at what's on there.
Well, I will say this, when you were talking, like if it's everything that every department's doing, it'll probably be hard for us to actually pinpoint, like the one thing we definitely don't,
Yeah.
that we want to get to. So especially, I know some of the things that we're thinking about is if they're doing something it's abnormal or different, or, you know, they kind of have a general idea of those.
Personally, I'd like to see the report. I don't know that we have to read about, we don't have to go over them. You provide us the report, bring to our attention anything that's time sensitive, and other than that, you give it to us and we can.
Yeah, just in some way they designate the, you know, if each department gives us 50 items, and there's 3 of them that's critical or something different that's taking place, it's the way they've always done it, but they highlight that, of course, that'd be helpful.
Basically what I'm saying is I don't know what it's going to look like. I'm going to take a stab at giving y'all something that's going to be a living document till we get it the way that y'all want to see it. We'll continue to work through that though. Because we want you to have all the information that you want and make it accessible to you. So if we've overlooked something, I apologize. We'll definitely try to get it to you. So that's all I have.
Any other staff here? Anything?
Just one thing, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
As Joanna mentioned earlier, the Board of Education will be approving their rates on June 18th. That's 2 days after our regular scheduled meeting. So if we can push ours back to the 23rd, that would work for us. There's 5 Tuesdays in the month of June, so it won't conflict with our first Tuesday June meeting. If you guys are okay with that, we'll put it on the agenda for your approval.
I think that would be prudent. Any objections? All right. To move a meeting, we need board action.
Yes.
We can do it on your next agenda. I think it's another time.
So you need to put that on our agenda to take that action. We can go ahead and note it for our calendar.
Because they advertise it too, right?
Any other staff? Ready? Got something?
How about the rec department? I saw Clarence is going there. I want to know something about yourself, how we deal with that on 21.
I think, where we at with the house?
I see that they have shown up with rails and tires and equipment to move it. I was on my head. I didn't do it. Calling actually today and getting a status update.
He called today. That's when I asked you about the key. I think they were looking for a key to try and get in.
We don't have a key.
They're moving it.
They're not stopping us from doing any work out there.
No, sir, they're not at all at this point. But
That's not our problem right now.
I don't know if Mr. Perry has a key or not.
I don't think we can ever get.
We don't have one, so we don't have one to give to them, so they don't have one, so they may have to get in.
Other than that, I think it would be a prudent statement to, accurate statement. There's some working with adjacent property owners that we need to work with, and we need to move forward. We're dragging around, as Todd told the last time, we're trying to save $500,000. But I don't want to see it, and I think that's where you're getting. We don't want to see next year come and we haven't done anything with the
No,
property.
we don't. No, we don't.
I had said I wanted to see something out there 18 to 24 months, so we need to keep that.
And if y'all want to move forward with bringing that consultant back on board now, if we do that, I think y'all still have another choice to make, which is going backwards. We actually hired CHA for the 119. That's what we did, and that's what they were a little bit of. We then moved that to a master plan study. And from that master plan, we abandoned the 119 project and moved to the 21 project. So technically, it was never competitive to bid on that one. Now, it is within y'all's purchasing policies and within state law to waive formalities and give it to a consultant because they were the best, because they already have history of the project and already been involved. But I think I would need to know from this board, one, how do you want to proceed? Do you want to do so and give them that project based on them being low bidder on another site? Or would you want to go back out to bid with that?
From an engineering standpoint, do we need to have a comprehensive survey done that shows the site with a topo on it so we know what we're working with?
We need to have at least the area that we're going to do in phase one. The only reason I would really say maybe not in this situation is because we do have LiDAR data that's pretty darn accurate that tells us what the rest of it's doing. It's not like we're devoid of any information. Giving the timing of things and how they progress further, my biggest concern is we took up the entire 120 acres is that come phase two, we end up redoing phase two. Just because the survey was old, nobody knew where it was, it's a different consultant. So I would say we need to do at least phase one and then use the LiDAR for master planning purposes beyond that.
And see, I would never do phase one of a subdivision without knowing what my whole properties look like, because I've got to work drainage on the whole thing.
I don't disagree, but like I said, we have LiDAR.
That LiDAR, it's pretty accurate.
It's just very accurate.
And what does it take to get a site plan that shows that whole piece of property with the information on it?
Now, I would certainly have them do that. Pictorially, I would have them geometrically place all the pieces on the site, given the topography of the lot and the wetlands that we already have delineated. That's already been done. I have located the second half, but we've had it delineated. The whole property's now been delineated.
Because we can do that in-house.
We did the first half of the house. The second's a little tricky because of the canopy, but yes, we can somehow do it.
Well, frankly, if the goal is to save time, not cost time, you start over and bid it out and all that.
I'll be perfect honest, if the goal is to save time, we need to find a consultant and move forward. If the goal is to save money, we can probably do that some other way. But if the time is the biggest issue, we need to hire a consultant and move forward. That's going to be the fastest delivery method by far.
And then use the one that's already done the work, then to rework it again.
And again, that's up to the board. It's,
$80,000.
sorry,
Which their number was like 480.
it was very close to 500. I don't remember
I
exactly.
think it's 480.
High fours.
But if we can take a little more time and find somebody in-house, I mean, that's still
Well, we
saving
were hoping we would.
$300,000.
In-house is him, so.
We were hoping we'd find this engineer, and we've not been able to find the engineer.
Correct.
I thought we were trying to do something different.
We were trying to, we need to hire a candidate.
Yeah.
And if we happen to hire one that had some experience and was able to do that sort of thing, I believe we can save a good portion. We're not going to save all. There's still architectural, there's still landscape, still survey, but we can save a good portion of it. Now, all that is predicated on the fact that we actually advertise and that right person comes up and we hire them.
We don't have to decide tonight though, either which way, we can talk about it.
And I might be totally off base, but I think that if I have the layout of the land and I've got the topography, I can sit down with Clarence and the people that we know what our needs are. And we can sit down on a piece of paper and if I got the scale, we can get it done.
There's a lot of, there's anything special,
Well, I mean,
Maybe that's simple, but.
no, I know this ball field has to be 230 feet this way, 250 this, I mean,
That's not what we're drawing.
but if you get it all, you know what grades are on the fields and all, I mean, there's some nuances that are gonna be special to, you know, I mean, wouldn't you say? I wouldn't say every engineering firm out there.
What I think the trick to that is as someone who did site design for that part of my career, I don't disagree up until you get to a sports field, needs to have a certain grading on it, it needs to have certain drainage features under it. And while I could probably get on Google and halfway find that, I don't know if I'm right or not. You know, the turf grass needs to match, somebody needs to tie all the landscaping and architecture together so that it has a cohesive look throughout.
Well, I'll say
What the
this,
fences are, what
our
the
school
material,
ball
the
fields,
finishes.
people thought they could do that, and we want this to be a certain type of
I
facility, I
agree
think.
with you, but when it boils down to it, yes, the consultants will lay out the stuff, but the people that do the work, I can take you to Pooler, and I can show you where consultants design the field, and I can show you where it's poor drainage. I can take you to Bryan County, I can show you part good, part bad. And in fact, the part that their staff did, I think is better than the consultant side.
Well, and to further muddy the waters here, what Pooler did on their last phase was a design build like that.
That's
And
right.
that is always the quickest delivery method, and one, should you choose to put this back out to bid, that we can always do is just a design build. Worked very well for us on the water line extension that we did. We did never deliver that project at the time that we did on Blue Jay Road, but had we not done it that way. And it's a viable option, you know, we can certainly do it that way. And then that helps a lot of what you're saying, because a lot of times I don't have to develop my plans to as large a degree as I would, because I'm working with the person that's going to build it. And we're working through that. I'm not having to bid it, so I don't have to put all the details to it that I would a competitive bid, as long as we're all on the same page about our work. So it's an effective delivery method.
But it is, aren't I correct, we asked CHA and they said that was their number, they couldn't do it for less.
They tried to negotiate some, but they're not going to get anywhere near what, they're not going to be able to get much off of that number. They may be able to cut a few percent.
Because I think my number was, I told them, hey, we can get 250, we can probably move this thing forward.
That's not right.
Probably the lion's share of their number is subbing it out to a design firm.
That's right.
Which honestly, if we want to do it
Turn
in-house,
around and give it to somebody else, so they're making their money off the top.
and if we were going to do it in-house, I think I would still ask y'all to retain CHA for that continuity through there. Because they're the sports field people. The rest is just what the chairman said, just engineering, just drainage. It's not.
I'm ready, we spent a lot of money and we've made some promises and I want to see it get moving, so how we do it?
Y'all tell me whether you want to tell CHA you have the best number and I'll bring it to you, or do you want to stick it out to bid, which will take 30 days, because it's, well, it's consulting, actually, we don't have to.
Talk to them, see what this is.
We've already talked to them, and they've already came down some, but they're not going to get that 250 number.
What is the number? Is that like a half?
And I got-
That's
That'd be
realistic. Is that a realistic?
Well, I got that number because I looked at, saw what Bryan County had to pay for their field. And
I mean,
Why couldn't we done
did
that?
CHA competitively look for the design thing, or do they just?
No.
So that's where they're, that's
Well,
where
let me
they're.
back, I don't know, but the first time was a design team, because we had MED, architectural, all the design, the same they'll have to here, so how they came up with a team, I don't know if it's competitive or not. But it also was a different project.
And I also understand we've had other time sensitive things, we needed to get this fire agreement done. there's a lot of moving parts out there, and you can only do so much at one time with one. I understand that.
Well, and what I think I relate to y'all will do so with great specificity right now. I cannot design that project. I don't have time. It'd take me 4 years to do it. Y'all won't be there. So without someone else coming in, and we do have some engineering help, but we don't have quite the level of experience there that it will take to do something like this. And while they can be very integral in the process, somebody else is still going to shepherd it along. So without someone else with the ability to actually independently handle that, doing it in-house is probably not a viable option.
What is your recommendation? To bid it out or to use this company already? What's your recommendation?
It's clearly up to this board, but it's a large sum of money that we're just kind of taking them at their word. That it's a good use of taxpayer dollars.
They bid it out.
And look, the worst is, we bid it out, we delayed this project another couple of weeks, and we've already done it, and they're still a low bidder, and we move on.
I think we bid it and see where we go with it.
Bid it out, maybe by that time some engineer
If we
loses
did
the job
this
and
2
he'll
months
come
ago,
and
we'd
hire him.
already-
Do away with it. Like you say, bid it as a design build?
Again,
I mean,
that's up to this board. Do you want to do a design build, or do you just want to bid design bid build? Design the plans, and then we'll go out and get a contract.
Give us your recommendation. You're an engineer.
If you want to get it out there the quickest, design build is probably it's going to be the quickest delivery method that you want to do.
Do you feel
Well,
good about
and it's
that?
not necessarily wasteful either. I mean, it's. Throw it out there and see what happens.
We gotta figure out where the road's going. We gotta know.
That's the only problem here, is I don't know that we're far enough down the process to have enough of a document that somebody can give us a price to build this facility at. We generally need a better scoping document, if you will, that has more definitively the actual layout of the property. Now, the other way of doing it is CHA did provide numbers to do just that, to do just a scoping phase, if you will.
How much is that?
It was about 80,000.
But you said we need that.
If you want to do design to build, if not, you just get an engineer on board, and that's part of their overall scope.
Will they credit that back, basically? So,
But you're committed to use it.
that's what I mean.
No, what that will do is give that drawing that the chairman referred to of all 120 acres, of all phases, present and future. But it would also give a little more detail as to the materials of the fence, the materials of the sidewalks, materials of the building, because if we do design and build,
How much would that cost?
We need that.
I believe it was 80,000. I have to go back and grab these numbers. I'm off memory. I've got them in my office. I'll be glad to, we can stop right now and go grab them if you want.
I agree that we need
No,
that.
I think you ought to try that.
As a basis.
And either way, we got to have that from some source. So.
And if we do that, and we do in-house, that's going to be the document we need to move that forward too. Because if we do design bid build, design build, we're asking a contractor at risk to price a blank piece of paper, and I don't think we can get that.
Well, if we go ahead and do the $80,000 thing, but we need that as a basis, and that can help us make the decision of what to do next, and we'll have something rolling.
It'll get us started. That was to do, and that was actually to do some of the geotechnical work, some of the engineering, survey work, to get that ball in motion of what we need to get there. And then we pick that up with actual engineering documents for the
Let's do
back.
that.
Start it.
Let's do that.
Go ahead. But does that keep us, not prevent us from bidding it?
No.
Okay.
Because then it gives us something to bid.
It's the plan that we need so that we can do.
Correct.
Yeah.
You would just bid this project. This is the project we won't deliver at that point.
Then they might decide to do it. They know we don't bid.
And they very well may.
They might change their mind.
They may.
You
So
get
I will-
over here, I mean, GIS then is going to print this big old plat, and we got a lot of information we can give them, they take it, and we sit down and work with them as to what we want and how we need it.
Yes, sir. Give you a call.
And I say we design the whole project.
Oh, yeah, I think so. You have to.
We design the whole project,
Yeah.
and then we determine what we're going, how we're going to do it.
Yes, sir.
All right. What else you got, Richard?
That's it. That was long enough. Outside of that?
I've got some additional questions, but I'll give you later, Charles. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Where do we stand on our road bid? On our road
honestly was delayed. We had one road put in there, Caribbean Village. That's the only thing waiting on is the scope for Caribbean Village because it's a little different up there, Caribbean Village Drive. And now that this is behind me, I want to do that tomorrow. I will get that, I'll get more and get that in written scope and we'll get it up to y'all. The restriping actually was sent out, that will go out. I think it was one more, other load, she's got it sent out too.
I just want to be sure we get those roads that's sensitive to those schools done while school's out.
Yes. I'll get that taken care of tomorrow when I get posted.
I don't want to be another 119.
That was terrible.
Well, we gotta learn. Anybody else? We got executive session?
Yes, we do.
You do.
Somebody give me that motion, please.
Make a motion to go into executive session, discuss personnel property and continuing business.
Motion on the second, all in favor? Any opposed, stand so adjourned. Next item of business is to approve the minutes from the executive session from April 21st.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Have a motion and a second to approve as written. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Any other business to come before this commission? I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion and a second. Without objection, we stand adjourned.
Oh.